56 years ago, in a quiet coastal town in Florida, a young woman vanished on a rainy night, leaving behind an empty house and a husband who said she had simply driven out to get some air. Authorities believed it was an accident, but with no body, no car found, and the case soon filed away as a hopeless missing person, neighbors and acquaintances could never shake the feeling that the story was never right, that something had been hidden. Then one day, after a major storm swept through Crescent Beach, the ground collapsed, revealing the rusted metal frame of a red Cadillac, along with traces that forced the entire case to be reopened. Before diving deep into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cold cases revived after decades like this, don't forget to hit subscribe to follow the next part. June 1969. St. Augustine was in the midst of a sweltering summer, the sky gray and murky, as if covered in a layer of steam. Gusts of wind, carrying the smell of sea salt, blew through the palm trees and the old wooden houses along the narrow road leading to Matanzas Bay. The neighborhood where the Holloway family lived was so quiet you could hear the waves crashing from afar and the creaking of ceiling fans in the homes. Todd Holloway, 36 years old, a former Air Force pilot, now an aircraft maintenance engineer, and his wife, Rachel, 29, a teacher at Osceola Elementary School in the town center. They had 3 young children, who were staying with their aunt in Jacksonville for summer vacation. Their house stood isolated on the edge of the neighborhood, with a palm forest behind it and a narrow dirt road connecting to the beach. That afternoon, the sky was heavy with clouds, the radio in the kitchen playing a program about the upcoming Apollo 11 mission, mixed with the distant sounds of waves and buzzing insects. Rachel folded laundry drying on the porch, tidied papers in the living room, then paused at the window overlooking the darkening sky over the bay. She noticed the red Cadillac parked crookedly in the driveway, covered in a thin layer of sea breeze dust. Todd came home late, his shirt soaked with sweat, and the two exchanged a few short words, voices tense. After an unfinished dinner, Rachel stacked the plates again without saying anything, then grabbed a small purse and stepped out the door. Neighbor Rosa Delgado was watering plants across the street and saw Rachel walk across the front porch, hair tied neatly, face somber. Rosa heard the car keys jingle, then the Cadillac's engine starting. The headlights swept in a circle through the palm trees, reflecting on the wet road, before the car sped out of the curve leading to the bay. The humid air thickened, the first raindrops falling as Rosa went back inside, thinking Rachel was driving to the beach as usual. Night fell slowly, streetlights casting a yellow glow on the sandy road. In the house across the street, the ceiling fan still spun, plates of food cold on the table, the distant waves steady like breathing. As the clock approached midnight, Todd stepped back into the living room, the light still shining on the cold emptiness, the front door ajar, letting the sea breeze rustle through the curtains with a soft whisper. He went out to the porch, looking at the road to the bay shrouded in thick fog, calling his wife's name into the damp cold, but hearing only the distant crashing waves in response. A moment of hesitation, then he turned back inside, picked up the landline phone, dialed the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, voice tense and urgent, as he reported that his wife had left the house that afternoon and hadn't returned. At the dispatch center, the call signal was logged at 11:47 p.m., marked as an emergency in the Matanzas Bay area, where residents were sparse and roads narrow. Immediately after, 2 night patrol officers, Mark Stevens and William Carr, were dispatched to the scene. They drove along the pitch-black coastal road, damp winds heavy with seaweed smell whipping against the windshield, headlights piercing through low palm trees, dusted with rain. Upon arrival, house number 142 stood isolated at the end of the row, porch light still on, door slightly open. Todd Holloway appeared at the door, face weary, eyes sunken from staying up late. Stevens asked him to stay calm, reconfirmed basic information: time wife left, clothing, vehicle, direction. Todd replied briefly that they had a small argument. Rachel drove out to calm down, He said she was wearing a green cloth dress, carrying a small purse. Carr took notes, marking the report time, while Stevens began checking the area around the house. The front lawn was patchy with water, faint tire tracks leading to the dirt road. The garage door was ajar, light inside still on. In the garage, Stevens saw several oil cans stacked against the wall, a torn rag draped over a chair, and a faint gasoline smell in the air. He shone his flashlight around, noting this detail in his notebook, then asked Todd to confirm it was reserve oil for the family generator. Out on the back porch, Stevens discovered a path leading to the wet sand, small shoe prints mixed into the sand, direction unclear. He marked the spot, photographed it with a Polaroid, sealed the area. Carr checked the kitchen and living room. The dining table had 2 unfinished plates, a glass of water, and a cold coffee cup on the counter. In the sink were old water stains and a spoon fallen askew. On the sofa, a magazine folded in half, page corners soaked from rain through an unclosed window. Carr noted the house was tidy, no signs of rummaging. In the hallway, leading upstairs, a handkerchief fallen, faint perfume smell. When Stevens returned, he asked Todd if anyone had entered the house that day. Todd shook his head, saying only him and his wife. Police asked him to list places Rachel might go: grocery store, school, small airport where she knew a few friends. The list was recorded, sent to the station for verification the next morning. Meanwhile, Carr scanned the backyard, discovering a dent in the mud, possibly where a tire stopped before turning. He quickly measured the tire tread width, noting it matched a 1968 Cadillac. A wet paper receipt stuck in the mud near the fence, ink smeared, only a few characters readable. Stevens picked it up, put it in an evidence bag, temporary code hash, E1. The entire scene was photographed in 16 shots, filed in the initial report. Before leaving, Stevens read back the statement to Todd. Wife left in the afternoon. Red car hasn't returned. No signs of crime or theft. Todd signed, hand shaking, handwriting scribbled. Police sealed the garage, advised not to move anything in the house. As the patrol car left the neighborhood, rain poured harder, wind whipping across the bay. In the car, Stevens opened his notebook, underlining points to verify. 1. Tire tracks. Direction to bay. 2. Gasoline smell in garage. 3. Receipt of unknown origin. He marked the case with code 69MA241 and sent a temporary report to Central Operations. A new file was opened on the duty desk. First line handwritten in black ink. Rachel Holloway, missing since afternoon of June 14, 1969, Matanzas Bay Area. The first night's photos were pinned with the report, starting an investigation no one knew would last how long. The next morning, with clouds still lingering over the bay and humidity thick on the tin roofs, the St. Johns County Sheriff's forensic team arrived at the Holloway house for a detailed scene survey. The surrounding area was cordoned with yellow nylon tape, signs posted, "Do not enter, active investigation." On the ground, sand still wet from night rain, clear tire tracks leaving the gate, running straight through the narrow dirt path to the main road. Stevens directed the techs to measure, mark each segment, results showing tread width and depth matching a 1968 Cadillac. He noted, tire tracks straight, no abrupt braking. In the early sun, light reflecting on the patchy ground, technicians took dozens of photos from multiple angles, used steel rulers to determine distance between tracks, planted small wooden stakes numbered 01 to 05. They followed the tracks to where the sand met asphalt, discovered a freshly broken fence board, brake surface still raw. A few meters away was a shallow skid mark, possibly from changing direction or accelerating. A soil and sand sample at this spot was collected for chemical analysis. In the garage, police meticulously checked everything. Door unlocked, lock intact, mechanical tools, screwdrivers, wrenches, oil cans all in place. On the wooden table, a gray cloth with dark streaks. Sample cut out and sealed code hash. A2, oil cans tightly capped, levels over half, No spill traces, but gasoline smell strong, lingering in the air. A soft rubber hose used for siphoning fuel, found behind an old cart, hose end damp. Technician noted, photographed, added to temporary record. In the kitchen, Stevens checked every small detail: dried coffee cup, water streaks around food plates, tables and chairs clean. No overturned items. He used UV light on door handles and table surface. No drag marks or blood. Living room tidy, magazine on sofa open midway, thin dust layer. Window slightly open, curtains wet from rain. Nothing missing, no rummaging signs. The house felt normal to the point it was hard to guess what happened. The back porch connected to damp sand, small shoe prints, lightly indented in soil, unable to distinguish male or female. Technician measured print length, noted average size, insufficient data. They expanded survey to the area behind the house, where ground dipped, grass bent toward the bay. At the beach edge, a dark oil streak on wet sand stretching about 2 meters, sample collected with pipette and cloth, code hash, liquid 03. A broken glass shard found nearby, metal rim still shiny, likely from a side mirror. They wrapped the glass, photographed position before moving. As the sun rose higher, the team photographed the entire house and surroundings with a tripod-mounted camera, created a 1/200 scale scene diagram. A hand-drawn sketch of evidence positions completed that morning. Stevens rechecked all doors, including back and bedroom windows. All slightly ajar, no scratches, locks not forced. He commented in the record, no signs of struggle or forced entry. Tech team collected additional soil samples, paint from door frames to rule out others entering. Moving to the roadhead, car observed a second tire track crossing the Cadillacs toward the neighboring house, but recheck showed it was the previous night's patrol car. Wooden stakes planted around tire marks, connected with nylon tape. Entire property cordoned, preliminary map from gate to end of dirt road. By noon, Bay Area marked with plastic buoys, planned for underwater search team that day. All evidence logged, hash A1 wet paper receipt, hash A2 oil-stained cloth, hash liquid 03 oil sample, hash glass 01 glass shard. Scene report 10 pages, detailing each item, signed by Stevens, car and tech lead. In final notes, Stevens added, tire tracks outbound, no return. Short brake mark, insufficient force. Gasoline smell evident in garage and back porch. No struggle signs. All data stored on site, copies sent to County Sheriff's Center for master file. Before leaving, Stevens circled the house one last time. Everything silent, only wind whistling through yellow warning tape and sea salt smell rising. He stopped at the yard edge, looking toward the bay where tire tracks vanished into low ground. Then back to the car. Final notebook line, scene intact. No fight signs, missing person left under normal conditions. Expand search to Bay Area within 1 mile radius. As the clock hit noon, tech team withdrew from the house, leaving rows of wooden stakes and swinging yellow tape, the only evidence of the first scene survey in the Rachel Holloway missing person case. After completing the scene survey, that same afternoon, the county investigation team began verifying the missing person's background and habits. Mark Stevens handled information collection at Osceola Elementary School, where Rachel Holloway had worked for 3 years. The principal's small office. Walls hung with school year calendar and student photos. Rachel's desk, neat in the corner. Still with graded papers, scorebooks, and a framed photo with 3 class children. Her colleague, music teacher Ellen Parker, said Rachel was calm, gentle, usually left school on time, drove the red Cadillac home. For the past 2 weeks, she seemed tired. Often forgot tests in the office. Mentioned several times wanting to take a break from teaching. In the work log, Rachel requested 3 days off, but no specific reason submitted. Stevens noted this detail, photographed the desk, seized a small brown leather notebook from the book stack. Inside were hasty notes. I have to speak up. Can't stay silent anymore. Additionally, he found a sealed envelope marked car insurance report, Matanzas Drive, stored in personal file cabinet, taken as temporary evidence. That afternoon, he went to St. Augustine Airfield, small airport, where Rachel often stopped, asked the night manager. A technician confirmed she visited a few times, mailed letters, and bought small gas amounts, often chatted with mechanic James Wheeler. Wheeler said last saw Rachel 3 days ago. She asked him to check brakes because the car slid lightly downhill. He confirmed no serious issues. Wheeler said she seemed stressed, asked if he knew any lawyers in Jacksonville. Stevens recorded this statement, had Wheeler sign. In the report, he wrote, "Missing person shows anxiety signs, preparing for personal change." Next, the team contacted her maternal family in Key West. Rachel's father, Don Hatfield, freelance artist, said 2 weeks ago his daughter called, said marriage troubled, considering separation. According to him, Rachel showed no depression, but confused, conflicted between leaving or enduring. Stepmother confirmed stepdaughter rarely shared personal matters, only said briefly, "I'll be fine." From this, police noted unstable marriage, possibility of voluntary departure to think. But Stevens still requested financial and mail checks for Rachel to verify preparation for long trip or not. At Holloway House, administrative tech team searched Rachel's private desk in the reading room. Drawer had joint savings book, bank envelope, dated June 3rd with $280 cash, and handwritten notes on teaching schedule, student phones, shopping list. Also a green leather diary, corners worn, seized as document. Diary had notable short entry, he changes unpredictably. "I'm afraid I don't recognize the person I started everything with." Later line, "Tonight I'll talk straight. If not, I'll go." Police photographed all pages, filed, code hash, D1. In closet, a small empty suitcase, clothes still hung full, no packing signs. Room clean, bed made. Stevens asked Todd about diary, he said didn't know, and requested to see after return. Stevens refused, said evidence in investigation file. Additionally, they seized daily expense notebook, food, gas, medicine, tuition money. All small amounts, no unusual transfers. Police also contacted local post office for recent outgoing mail. No packages to other addresses. Report. No evidence of relocation plans from St. Augustine. On travel habits, Rachel usually drove to school, sometimes supermarket, on King Street or bookstore near Harbor. No close friends outside colleagues. Weekend evenings she often drove around Bay, back before 9 p.m., witness Rosa Delgado, confirmed seeing her walk alone a few times, no one with. This information compiled into personal profile table, occupation, assets, usual routes, social relations. In psychological assessment, police noted mild emotional instability, possibly from marriage stress. Same day, tech room collected all personal papers, including letters, address book, receipts, diary, expense book, sealed in 4 evidence envelopes. Before ending, Stevens reviewed notes, dedicated teacher, gentle, no financial issues, cracked marriage, intent to temporarily leave to think. He added final report line, cross-referenced diary content, with husband's statement, to verify conflict level. As late afternoon sun shone through palm trees, investigation team left school and Holloway House, carrying carefully packed notebooks and papers, starting the phase of verifying the personal life of the woman who vanished in the Florida summer of 1969. On the morning of June 16, 1969, 2 days after Rachel Holloway was reported missing, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office mobilized its first search team. 15 officers, 3 water rescue personnel, and nearly 20 local volunteers gathered at the parking lot near the Matanzas Bridge. Mark Stevens was assigned to command the scene, planning according to wind direction and tidal currents. They divided the search area into 3 routes: the A1A route along the bay shore, the Matanzas Swamp to the south, and the sand strip near the Holloway residence. The teams were equipped with walkie-talkies, paper maps, measuring tapes, and binoculars. The road patrol team used jeeps to scan both sides of the road, noting any unusual objects, especially red paint chips or vehicle parts. The water rescue team launched 2 small motorboats into the bay, slowly sweeping the shallow waters and dropping marker buoys at suspicious points. Local residents along the A1A route were interviewed. Most confirmed that on the night of the incident, there was light rain, strong wind, and no unusual sounds beyond distant thunder. A fisherman named Peter Hall reported seeing a moving light near the swamp shore around 9 p.m., which then went out. But he wasn't sure if it was a car or a boat. Stevens noted this detail and sent it to the mapping team to mark the area about a mile from the Holloway home. On land, cars groups scanned along the bay entrance, discovering many overlapping old tire tracks that were hard to distinguish by vehicle type. They used measuring tapes and took casts of a few deeper tracks, but could not yet confirm a match with the Cadillac. Near the old wooden bridge, a group of volunteers found a red paint chip stuck on a rock, the size of a fingernail, collected into evidence bag #paint04. By midday, the sun was intense, high temperatures making the search difficult, with many swamp areas flooded deeper than expected. The rescue team used long poles to measure depth, finding thick mud and still water, with no signs of submerged objects. A handheld magnetic scanner was tried, but interfered with by natural minerals in the soil, yielding no clear results. Stevens called for a break and gathered the team for reports. By afternoon, the scanned area had expanded to nearly 4 square miles, still with no discoveries related to the missing person or vehicle. He noted in the log, no large objects, no skid marks, no collision signs. At 4 p.m., the rescue team shifted south, following a small river branch to the sea. Waves rose high, water mixed with silt, visibility limited. 2 civilian divers joined the search, equipped with safety anchor lines, diving to check the deepest areas, but finding only thick mud and submerged roots. Meanwhile, the shore team searched the dense palm area, finding an old glass bottle, a damaged men's shoe, nothing related to Rachel. The sheriff arrived at the scene in the late afternoon, heard the report, and ordered a halt due to the rapidly rising tide. All measurement data was recorded, buoy positions and scan points marked with hand coordinates. A large map drawn in red ink depicted the first day's search area, stamped Day 1. Stevens submitted the preliminary report, 6 hours of searching, 5 areas checked, 0 results, weather conditions hindering visibility. The technical team proposed using the Coast Guard sonar scanner, but needed approval. By evening, the teams returned to base, exhausted, clothes caked in mud, equipment wet from rain. At the temporary office near the bridge, Stevens spread the map on the table, highlighting the swamp area not thoroughly checked due to deep water. He circled the light position, reported by witness Peter Hall, marking it priority location Day 2. A memo was sent to headquarters, request increased water forces and bay bottom metal scanning equipment. As dusk fell, local groups quietly dispersed, trucks hauling boats back to the station, leaving only a few night shift officers to monitor the area. The wind shifted, the bay surface rippled, yellow bridge lights reflecting in long trembling streaks. Before leaving the scene, Stevens pinned a copy of the report to the temporary office wall, the last line reading clearly, "End of first day search. No trace or signs of Cadillac vehicle found. Recommend expanding range southeast of Matanzas Swamp." Footprints on the sand gradually blurred in the afternoon rain, leaving the damp ground with a brackish smell, where the first search closed in silence and hopelessness. On the afternoon of the 3rd day after launching the search operation, Todd Holloway was summoned to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office for a formal interrogation. The interview room was small, with pale green painted walls, containing only a metal table, 2 facing chairs, and a low-hanging fluorescent light. Mark Stevens handled it directly, with a recording secretary and a technical investigator present. Todd was invited to sit, hands clasped, posture closed. He appeared tired, but not evasive, eyes moving slowly around the room. Stevens began with basic questions about the evening Rachel left home. Todd recounted that day, in the late afternoon, he returned from the maintenance hangar at the airport, the weather humid, and the two exchanged words about monthly expenses. He said Rachel often got tense when discussing finances, and he only wanted to explain, but was cut off. According to Todd, his wife left the dinner table, grabbed her purse, said nothing more, walked out the front door, and then he heard the car start and drive away. He insisted there was no major argument, no physical altercation. When Stevens asked why he didn't contact anyone immediately after, Todd replied that he thought she was just driving around the bay to relax as usual. He admitted staying home until evening, then dozing off in the living room. When he woke, it was nearly midnight, Rachel still not back, and that's when he called the police. Throughout the statement, Todd maintained an even tone, showing no clear emotion. Stevens shifted to questions about the marriage, Todd saying everything was fine, just a few minor disagreements. He admitted Rachel had mentioned quitting teaching and going away for a while, but he thought it was just a passing mood. When asked if Rachel had ever wanted separation, Todd hesitated a few seconds, then denied, "We never seriously discussed that." Stevens noted the delayed response and avoiding direct eye contact. While speaking, Todd often clasped his hands, continuously twisting his wedding ring, sometimes pausing mid-sentence. He described the evening details again: overcast sky, radio broadcasting about Apollo 11, Rachel silent throughout dinner. He said it felt nothing unusual, just an uncomfortable atmosphere. When asked about the gasoline smell in the garage, Todd explained that morning, he reorganized the spare fuel cans and spilled some gasoline on the floor, wiping it himself with a rag. Stevens asked why there was a siphoning hose and oil-stained cloth in the garage, Todd replying that he often used them to check the generator, unrelated to Rachel's car. When asked about the open fuel can, Todd said, "Maybe neighborhood kids messing around." His demeanor in this part was more flustered, speaking quickly and shifting topics to Rachel borrowing a friend's car for shopping. The investigator noted this change, marking defensive reaction, avoids mentioning garage. Stevens changed direction, asking about Rachel's recent behavior and mood. Todd said she was easily upset, often insomniac, sometimes forgetting to lock doors or leaving car keys. He thought she was too sensitive and unusually quiet in recent days. Stevens requested a specific description of Rachel's outfit when she left. Todd said, a green dress, white, low-heeled shoes, not remembering if she wore a jacket. When asked about the purse, he replied briefly, small type, brown leather. Both details matched neighbor Rosa Delgado's statement. However, when Stevens asked about places Rachel habitually stopped, Todd hesitated. He said she often stopped at the store near the bridge, sometimes drove to the small airport, but I'm not sure if she went recently. Stevens asked further if Rachel knew anyone at the airport, Todd replying that maybe she just made small talk, but when James Wheeler's name was mentioned, he bowed his head, silent for a few seconds, then said, I know he's a mechanic there. The record noted the interruption in response, voice change, soft but tense. When asked finally if there was any physical conflict, Todd said firmly, no. He insisted he never hit his wife, never threatened, never stopped her when she wanted to go out. Stevens observed his temple pulsing slightly, hands clenched into fists, but voice still calm. In the final part of the interrogation, the investigator asked an open question, do you think anyone else was making your wife anxious? Todd replied, I don't know. Maybe she just needed time to herself. Stevens wrote the last line in the record, subject cooperative, not evasive, mild tension, controlled tone, minor inconsistencies in timeline and actions. After 3 hours, the interrogation ended. Todd signed to confirm the transcript, requested to go home. As he left the room, Stevens stayed to reread the entire transcript, underlining unusual details, time gap from Rachel leaving to reporting, inconsistent gasoline smell explanation, flustered reaction when mentioning the airport. Before leaving the office, he added in the notebook margin, need independent verification of Todd's statement on timeline, location, and activities on the evening of June 14, 1969. The next morning, the investigation team began cross-referencing the information Todd Holloway provided in the interrogation with statements from related individuals. Stevens returned to the Bayside neighborhood to meet neighbor Rosa Delgado again, the last person to see Rachel before she disappeared. Rosa confirmed her previous account. In the late afternoon, she saw Rachel walk past the front porch, carrying a purse and wearing a green dress. When Stevens asked again about the exact time, she said probably before the rain, around a bit past 7 p.m., at least an hour earlier than the time Todd stated his wife left near dusk. Rosa also remembered hearing the car engine start strongly and gravel spraying on the road, which Todd did not mention. Stevens noted this time discrepancy, marking departure time contradiction. He asked further if she saw anyone else around the Holloway house then, Rosa confirming only Rachel, no strangers. Police then went to the Jenkins house 2 doors down. Mr. Jenkins, a retired sailor, said that evening he was sitting on the porch, listening to the radio, heard a car speeding toward the Matanzas Bridge, but couldn't identify the type. Stevens asked him to describe the sound. Jenkins saying the engine whined like an 8-cylinder, matching a 1968 Cadillac. Second note in the record, sound matches victim's vehicle. Afterward, the team moved to the Gulf gas station on a 1A, where Todd said he stopped that afternoon to fill up. The attendant Larry Pierce confirmed serving a man driving a dark silver sedan, not a red Cadillac, around 5 p.m., but didn't remember the face clearly. When Stevens showed Todd's photo, Pierce said, "Seems familiar, but not sure." He remembered a woman stopping later to fill up, driving a red Cadillac, alone, wearing a bright dress, buying a bottle of water, and asking directions to the old bridge leading to the beach. The time Pierce noted was about 6:45 p.m. Stevens immediately noted, witness saw Rachel Holloway, time 6:45 p.m., heading toward Matanzas Bridge. He had Pierce sign the confirmation and collected a copy of the sales log for June 14th, recording a sale of 3 gallons of gas and 1 bottle of water at that exact time frame. This was the first evidence confirming Rachel actually left the neighborhood and headed south, rather than returning home. Next, Stevens went to the small St. Augustine airport to meet night shift employee James Wheeler. Wheeler confirmed knowing Rachel for a few years, often helping check her car. He said that evening he was on duty until 8, but didn't see her stop by. However, Wheeler remembered the next morning seeing a small tire track on the dirt path leading to the hangar, along with a few broken red paint chips near the fence. At the time, he thought some vehicle turned too sharply and didn't report it. Stevens had him point out the exact spot, then photographed and measured. The tire track matched the Cadillac's tire width, direction parallel to the path out to the bay. Wheeler also added that the previous week, Rachel had asked him about a lawyer in Jacksonville, saying she wanted to ask about divorce procedures, matching the diary entry recovered from the home. Stevens marked this information, but did not yet enter it into the official report, pending independent verification. On the way back, he stopped at the small grocery store near the Matanzas Bridge, where locals often gathered. The owner, Nancy Clark, remembered seeing a red car driving slowly through the intersection on that rainy evening around after 8. But it was dark, so she couldn't see the driver clearly. She only remembered the headlights shining into the window and the silhouette behind the wheel. Thus, the last time the car was seen was around 8 p.m., nearly an hour later than the 6:45 mark from the gas station attendant, indicating Rachel continued toward the swamp. All statements were compiled into a movement route diagram: Holloway home, Gulf gas station, toward Matanzas Bridge, southern swamp. When cross-referenced with the scene map, Stevens noted the vehicle's direction matched the tire tracks found on the sand behind the house. He concluded in the temporary record, high probability victim drove herself away from the neighborhood, traveling south on a 1A. Last confirmed time around 8 p.m., near Matanzas Bridge area. However, the data did not match Todd's claim that Rachel left later, after 8. In the supplemental report, Stevens clearly noted, time discrepancy between husband's statement and witnesses, failure to call searching for wife for over 4 hours, needs review. Before ending the workday, He held a brief team meeting, presenting the event markers, last sighting, suspected route, vehicle match, and assigned the technical team to recheck radio logs from the night of June 14th for any interrupted vehicle signals near the bridge. The final note in the verification section of the file stated that a civilian witness saw Rachel Holloway's red Cadillac moving toward the Matanzas Bridge between 6:45 and 8 p.m., then disappearing from view. Stevens closed the notebook, signed, concluding the statement verification portion in the official missing person investigation file. On the morning of June 18, 1969, 2 days after completing statement cross-referencing, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office launched an expanded object search phase in the Matanzas swamp area, where Rachel Holloway's red Cadillac was last reported, passing according to witnesses. Mark Stevens commanded the operation, coordinating with the Water Rescue Unit and the Florida Coast Guard technical team. 5 small boats were deployed, divided into 3 directions, one team scanning along the old Matanzas Bridge, one sweeping the narrow eastern bay, and the remaining delving deep into the dense swamp where water was shallow and roots thickly covered. The early morning sky was cloudy, southerly wind carrying heavy algae-smelling moisture, the swamp surface patchy with dark brown mud. The rescue team used long aluminum poles to probe depth. Each time the pole hit bottom, water splashed up gray and murky. A technician recorded average depths from 2 to 4 meters, soft bottom, easy to sink. They dropped positioning buoys at each checkpoint, 50 meters apart, coded by hand map coordinates. At 9 a.m., one of the boats detected a distinct gasoline smell in the area, about 400 meters south of the old bridge. The gasoline odor stood out against the damp wind, stretching across the water in a silvery sheen strip. Stevens ordered a halt, anchoring and taking water samples. The technician collected 3 full glass bottles, numbered #fuel 05, sent to the lab. They continued probing around, finding no large objects below the surface. A diver equipped with a mask and anchor line went down to check a 10-meter radius around the sheen spot. Under the mud, only roots and rotten wood. Upon surfacing, he confirmed no metal or mechanical structures. Stevens had the boat move 300 meters east, using underwater listening devices for metal sounds, but signals were only natural interference from minerals. The opposite shore team scanned with handheld magnetic detectors, results empty. On the water surface, oil sheens continued appearing sporadically, spreading nearly 100 square meters, drifting slowly with the wind. Another sample was taken at the southern edge, coded #fuel 06. On shore, Carr's group walked along the bayside grass strip, observing many small depressions, like footprints stepping to the water edge then back, but not clear enough to date. They photographed and marked positions. A dark-colored fabric scrap caught on roots was collected, caked in mud and smelling of gasoline, sealed as #cloth 02. By noon, temperatures rose, water evaporating into a thin mist, limiting visibility. Teams took a break, agreeing on preliminary assessment. No signs of submerged vehicle, no metal structures responding to sound. Stevens ordered rescanning the entire bridge area with dragnet boats, each pass 20 meters apart. After 2 hours, still no large objects found, only more rotten wood and algae. The technician concluded depth and thick mud made mechanical method discovery nearly impossible. Stevens decided to expand another 500 meters downstream, where flow was slow with many side branches. Another faint gasoline smell appeared, spreading on the water, but not concentrated at a specific point, indicating the source was not nearby. Near 5 p.m., tide rose, water rising quickly, forcing the team to retreat to shore. Day's summary report noted 18 survey points, 7 liquid samples, 1 fabric sample, 0 metal or mechanical objects, 0 direct links to missing vehicle. Stevens reread each note, pausing at distinct gasoline smell around area between Old Bridge and Eastern Swamp Branch, source undetermined. He ordered scene preservation, no locals near until water test results. As the sun set, pale yellow light reflected on the shimmering swamp with oil streaks. Stevens looking through binoculars, horizon blurring. He added the day's final notebook line. Fully scanned Matanzas area, no large objects found, only fuel smell and expanding sheen. Vehicle submersion unconfirmed. Continue monitoring tidal changes for next 24 hours. The boats turned back toward the bridge, leaving the murky calm water, red buoys bobbing in the vast space where oil streaks faded in the 1969 Florida sunset. On June 22, 1969, after nearly a week of continuous deployment, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office completed the first summary report on Rachel Holloway's disappearance. The report was compiled at the central office, aggregating all data from 5 investigation groups, including scene notes, witness statements, samples, and Matanzas swamp search results. The technical lead confirmed all 18 underwater survey points, found no mechanical objects or submersion signs. Liquid samples from the scene tested positive for light hydrocarbons, proving fuel on the water, but unable to determine release time or origin. The analysis lab suggested possible spill from a small fishing boat anchored nearby during heavy rain. Shore-collected fabric and glass samples yielded no identifiable DNA, common materials, insufficient for linking to the disappearance. Tire tracks around the Holloway home matched 1968 Cadillac tires, but also similar to many local vehicles, not sole evidence. The summary report stated clearly, no signs of struggle, break-in, or criminal activity in the home. No evidence confirming harm or accident to the missing person. All witness statements, including Rosa Delgado, gas station attendant Larry Pierce, and mechanic James Wheeler, were listed chronologically, showing Rachel left home in the afternoon, drove alone toward Matanzas Bridge, then vanished from sight. The period between 8 p.m. and midnight had no witnesses or related signals. Dispatch evaluated medium reliability, insufficient to open a criminal file. The sheriff signed approval to suspend search operations, transferring the file to missing person, ongoing review status. In Stevens' submission, the last line read, no criminal evidence found, no violent signs, no determined location or circumstances leading to disappearance. That same day, administration archived all paper files, 84 pages, 27 photos, 12 sealed evidence items, and 3 appendices. The file was coded 69MA241, placed in the pending follow-up storage cabinet. The internal summary meeting was brief. Teams agreeing to temporarily end field investigation, maintaining only new information monitoring if reported by civilians. Stevens added to his personal notebook, Rachel Holloway case. Circumstances undetermined, movement direction undetermined, no crime evidence found. That evening, the bulletin board at the sheriff's headquarters removed the missing person notice, replacing it with small copies posted at the post office and roadside stores. The Rachel Holloway missing person file officially shifted to inactive case status, marking the end of the first investigation phase of a case that, up to that point, remained merely a traceless disappearance in the Florida summer of 1969. In August 1970, more than a year after the search ended without results, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office completed the process of transferring the Rachel Holloway missing person case file to the Central Archive in Jacksonville, in accordance with regulations for inactive cases. The file, coded 69MA241, consisted of all 84 pages of reports, 12 sealed evidence samples, 27 crime scene photographs, and 3 supplemental reports, bound into 2 thick volumes with brown covers bearing the seal of the police department. The transfer was recorded in the internal handover log, signed by Administrative Lieutenant D. Collins, who was responsible for archiving files of missing persons cases with undetermined causes. Upon entering the data into the archive catalog, the archivist mistyped the vehicle frame number from Cadillac DeVille 1968, code 5Y43, to 5Y34, causing the file to not match any registered vehicle in the state's vehicle control system. This minor discrepancy prevented the automated data from linking the file to the missing vehicle report. The record in the IBM computer using magnetic tape from that era, only displayed the line "Missing Adult, Vehicle Unknown." 3 years later, when the state's first electronic catalog system was updated, the Holloway case was not automatically imported due to the lack of a valid identifier code. At the same time, during evidence inventory, a liquid sample numbered #fuel05, a glass vial containing water with gasoline streaks collected from the swamp area, was reported missing. The report showed that this sample was temporarily stored in the county's forensic lab, but had no transfer receipt to the Central Archive. Upon rechecking, the evidence locker section M1969 contained only 11 packages, missing #fuel05. Collins noted possibly destroyed per regulations for flammable liquid samples, but without confirming documentation. After review, he closed the file, marked the status archive, incomplete inventory, and placed it in shelf row 4, slot 16B, with the group of missing persons files from 1968-1970. Over the next 10 years, the Jacksonville Archive transitioned to a new storage system, with all data entered into perforated magnetic cards, each file assigned a separate retrieval code. However, due to the discrepancy in the vehicle frame number field and the note "Vehicle Unknown," the Holloway case was not assigned a card code. The file existed only in the original paper ledger, lying among hundreds of other missing persons cases from the 60s. In 1982, when the statewide data standardization program was implemented, only files with valid codes were scanned into the automated catalog. The system excluded 69 MA241 because no vehicle information was found. An internal update memo clearly stated, "Case removed from index due to incomplete identifier." From then on, the Rachel Holloway case file disappeared from the retrieval catalog, existing only in paper form, not marked in the electronic lookup table. The remaining evidence, glass fragments, oil-stained fabric, and photo reports, continued to lie in a sealed iron box, gathering thick dust through multiple inventories. When a new generation of administrative staff took over, they only recorded this file as "Missing Adult, Inactive pre-1971. No one noticed the small italicized text in the corner of the cover, "Matanzas Bay Area." In May 1990, another major inventory took place, with many old files transferred to auxiliary storage or discarded due to deterioration. File 69 MA241 was moved to the basement auxiliary, slot P7, without a digital copy. From then on, the Rachel Holloway missing person case no longer appeared in any automated search system of the state of Florida. When the administrative staff completed the summary report, the last line in the archive log read, "Case 69 MA241, transferred, archived, inactive retrieval code missing." And thus, the Holloway case file officially fell into a state of silence, lying dormant in the cold iron cabinet of the Jacksonville Archive for decades without anyone mentioning it. In the years after the Rachel Holloway case file was archived in Jacksonville, no additional reports, witnesses, or new clues were added. The St. Johns County Sheriff's Office maintained periodic inventory procedures, but these mostly involved cross-checking evidence quantities and storage conditions, with no actual investigative activity. Rachel's name occasionally appeared in statewide missing persons statistical catalogs, but due to the identifier code discrepancy, her information was never fully displayed. The old yellowed missing person posters pasted at the town post office were removed when the new generation missing persons image update program began in 1975. Old neighbors gradually moved away. The residential area along Matanzas Bay changed its appearance, and the Holloway house was transferred to new owners, a retired military family. Inside, the traces of the incident remained only in the police files. Todd Holloway sold the house in early 1971, leaving Florida without a clear forwarding address. According to federal tax records, he moved to work for an aviation company in Atlanta, then relocated to California in the late 1970s. There, he changed jobs multiple times, registering residences under the intermediary name T.A. Hollow, avoiding the use of his real surname in administrative documents. No one in the new neighborhood knew he had once had a missing wife. Todd lived reclusively, renting a small apartment, occasionally participating in old pilots' associations, and introducing himself as an early retired engineer. As time passed, the Rachel Holloway case gradually faded from the memory of the town of St. Augustine. In annual summary meetings, File 69 MA 241 was only mentioned as undetermined missing person case from 1969, listed under reference number 14. Many young investigators had never heard of this case, while those who had participated had retired or passed away. Mark Stevens left the force in 1984, taking a copy of his personal notebook, but no longer permitted access to the original file. By the late 1980s, when the National Missing Persons Database was established, the Holloway case was not entered due to lacking vehicle information and DNA profiles. All related data stopped at a few summary lines: female, white, 29 years old, missing in Matanzas Bay area, circumstances undetermined. For more than 30 years, there were no letters, calls, or other evidence suggesting Rachel was still alive or had been found. The maternal family in Key West also gradually cut contact with local authorities, believing she might have left on her own. Local press once wrote a few short lines in the Unsolved Cases column, but only repeated old information without drawing attention. Todd Holloway, then in his 50s, still lived alone in a suburban Sacramento apartment without remarrying. He was known to neighbors as a quiet man who woke early to jog and sometimes talked about his time as a military pilot, never mentioning his past in Florida. As those who knew the old story died or moved away, Rachel's name disappeared from the collective memory of the small community that had once buzzed about the disappearance. In the FDLE's backlog file reviews in the late 1990s, case code 69 MA 241 no longer appeared in the electronic catalog, so it was not selected for any re-examination rounds. The original file box remained untouched on the basement iron shelf in the Jacksonville archive, with dust so thick it obscured the word Holloway on the spine. No one asked about it, no one reread Stevens' notes, or the black and white photos of the Bayside house. Time turned the disappearance into a silent file fragment among thousands of other documents. When the new century began, the completely new automated storage system had no data pointing to the Holloway case, as if it had never existed. Todd Holloway, then in his 70s, continued living anonymously in a California retirement community, while in Florida, his old house was renovated, the facade painted white, with no one knowing it had once been the center of an unsolved disappearance. Nearly 40 years passed, and File 69 MA 241 still lay dormant in the darkness, forgotten along with those who had once sought answers. In August 2011, Hurricane Irene swept through Florida's east coast, causing heavy rain and severe landslides in the Crescent Beach area, more than 10 miles south of St. Augustine. After the storm passed, a local infrastructure construction company was hired to clean up the subsided land near Highway A1A, where part of the concrete embankment had broken, to prepare for site restoration. On the morning of September 4th, when worker Ronald Brewer's excavator scooped a layer of mud at a depth of nearly 2 meters, the bucket blade hit a hard object emitting a dry metallic clang. Thinking it was an old construction steel piece, he stopped the machine and went down with colleagues to check. In the mud mixed with roots and gravel, they discovered a section of dark red painted metal frame, exposed under the hazy post-rain sunlight. As they dug wider, the shape became clearer. A curved front frame end, corroded body, broken chrome mirror, with some wire segments and mud-stuck glass shards still inside. Brewer realized this was not industrial waste, but the front body of an old car. He immediately reported to the site foreman, who called the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office to report discovery of suspicious vehicle frame after landslide. Half an hour later, 2 local police cars arrived at the scene. They cordoned off an area nearly 20 meters long, preventing curious onlookers from gathering, and ordered the construction company to halt all activities. The initial field technician recorded the object was lying at a 45-degree angle, front buried in mud, rear facing the sea. The red paint was rusted, but in a few spots, The original sheen still glimmered under the wet mud. Stevens had long retired, but his name was mentioned when the internal report confirmed the discovery coordinates matched the Matanzas swamp area, the region searched in 1969. A team of forensic experts was dispatched that day, bringing mechanical excavation tools and field analysis equipment. As they cleared the mud around the object, they clearly saw the faded Cadillac manufacturer emblem on the radiator grille, next to a nearly detached rusted metal license plate fragment. Under the remaining paint, 3 digits 241 were visible, matching the end of the old missing person case file code. The officer in charge immediately requested a report to Central Command and called for support from the Jacksonville Field Technical Room. By noon, the area was fully sealed, with a specialized crane dispatched to secure the vehicle frame. Highway A1A was temporarily blocked in one lane, and police set up tents to protect the object. Local media appeared upon seeing patrol cars and barriers, but were kept 100 meters away. A technician temporarily identified the object as the front frame of a late 1960s Cadillac DeVille, based on the frame structure and grille style. The field team used low-pressure water spray tools to remove mud, revealing a broken front wheel and a side door panel with black burn marks. When removing the soil underneath, they detected a faint old gasoline smell mixed with wet mud. A broken metal wire segment and a curved glass shard like a mirror were temporarily collected, labeled hash CB 2011-01. The preliminary report sent to the sheriff's office was brief. Large metal object, highly likely a car, red color, found after Hurricane Irene at Crescent Beach, 6 miles from Matanzas Bay. Has burn marks and residual gasoline smell. By the end of the day, the area was covered with a large tarp, with lights hung inside for nighttime security. Police officers were on duty 2 per shift to prevent intrusion. That night, news of the mysterious car exposed after storm appeared in the evening broadcast of local station WJXT, attracting attention from residents around St. Augustine, but police refused to provide specific details, only saying they were verifying the vehicle's identity. In the end-of-day report, the captain in charge wrote the conclusion: object discovered at Crescent Beach requires full excavation and transfer to Jacksonville Forensic Facility. Possibility of relation to an old county missing person, file not excluded. By 10 p.m., the area was completely sealed, with police lights still flashing, reflecting on the pooled water and the rusted red metal fragment lying still in the landslide pit, something that the next morning, everyone would learn, would reopen a file forgotten for over 4 decades. On the morning of September 5, 2011, the Crescent Beach area was fully sealed for the official excavation under the supervision of the Jacksonville Field Technical Room and representatives from the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. The technical team of 8 people, equipped with full mechanical archaeological tools, began work at 6 a.m. Layers of wet clay were scraped away with flat shovels and steel trowels, stopping every 10 centimeters to document and photograph. The subsided surface was marked with a grid of squares, each 2 square meters, with separate coordinate labels. At a depth of about 2.5 meters, the vehicle frame began to reveal the complete shape of the front section: curved hood, radiator grille, with thick, mud-covered Cadillac logo, 2 front wheels broken off the axles. The steel frame beams were corroded, the body deformed by long-term soil pressure, but the characteristic structure of the late 60s DeVille line was still recognizable. As mud was cleared from the cabin, the team noted the passenger side door was jammed shut, glass shattered, while the driver's side door was slightly ajar. They inserted an endoscopic probe into the cabin for inspection, with the camera capturing blurry images, thick mud, fabric pieces, and an object shaped like human bones. Excavation was paused to consult forensic experts. After approval, the team continued clearing mud around, expanding the range to 3 meters deep. A section of rotted leather seat was lifted out, beneath which were an arm bone, shoulder joint, and part of the skull with the intact occipital dome, dark yellow in color. Under the cabin floor, They found several scattered small bones and a pair of white women's shoes, soles rotted, laces broken. The technician documented everything, photographed, then used soft brushes to clean each area. The vehicle floor was cleared of thick mud to avoid damage to objects. During this process, staff discovered a small metal object stuck between the seat crevice and floor, a rusted pair of scissors, 8-inch blade, pointed tip, round handle, slightly bent. The object was retrieved with specialized tongs, placed in a plastic bag coated hash CB 2011-04, sealed on site. At the same time, a faint gasoline smell emerged from the undercarriage soil. Technicians drilled 2 test points to measure remaining hydrocarbons, confirming fuel traces. They continued clearing mud at the rear, discovering more broken headlight fragments, a round metal rod suspected to be part of the steering column, and the license plate nearly detached. When cleaned, the faint lettering FL68, D241 became clear, perfectly matching the description of Rachel Holloway's vehicle in the 1969 file. The forensic experts immediately photographed and documented the comparison. Each evidence piece was wrapped separately in thick plastic bags, labeled in discovery order. Human bones were collected with sterile plastic tools, divided into 3 bags, coded hash S1, hash S3, temporarily transferred to a refrigerated specialized vehicle. Soil samples around the cabin were taken for chemical analysis to detect burn or fuel seepage. By noon, the vehicle frame was secured with a wooden brace, prepared for lifting with a hydraulic crane. Cables were threaded through 2 frame beams. The entire process continuously filmed for forensic purposes. As the car was lifted from the ground, thick mud fell with a heavy thud, revealing the rotted body covered in moss. Inside, besides the bones and collected objects, a small leather pouch fragment, stuck to the doorframe, was discovered, containing a rusted metal keychain and a broken strap piece. The pouch was sealed coated hash CB 2011-05. The remaining frame was placed on a specialized truck, covered with tarp, sealed with FDLE tape. The lead technician drafted the report on site. Excavated object is red Cadillac DeVille, approximately 1968 model, containing human remains and metal scissor-shaped object, with fuel traces. Coordinates: 29°43 N 81°14, W 200M from Highway A1A. The report was signed by representatives from 3 units, St. John's Police, FDLE, and Jacksonville Medical Examiner's Office. In the late afternoon, as the vehicle frame was craned onto the truck, the smell of mud and old gasoline blended into the heavy post-storm swamp air. The field team cleaned the area, erected temporary fencing to prevent erosion. Crane wheel tracks sank deep into the wet soil, while on the excavation surface, numbered stakes still stood unsteadily in the sea breeze. The end-of-day report clearly stated, "All evidence sealed, transferred to Jacksonville Forensic Center for Preservation and Analysis. Crescent Beach area handed back to local authorities after safety check." As dusk fell, the specialized convoy slowly departed the landslide pit, yellow lights casting on the rusted red steel frame still dripping water. That was the first time in over 40 years that Rachel Holloway's Cadillac reappeared on the surface, carrying silent traces of a disappearance once buried by time. On September 12, 2011, all evidence collected at Crescent Beach was transferred to the Jacksonville Forensic Medical Examiner's Office for analysis. The red Cadillac DeVille was placed in a dehumidified warehouse, disassembled into separate parts for mechanical, chemical, and biological examination. Human bone samples were prioritized. Technicians extracted marrow from the intact femur section for DNA, simultaneously comparing with genetic samples from living relatives provided by the Federal Archive. 2 weeks later, the matching results showed a 99.84% compatibility with Eva Holloway's DNA profile. Rachel's eldest daughter, registered in the national database. The report clearly identified the victim, Rachel Marie Holloway, female, born February 3, 1940, missing since June 14, 1969, officially identified on September 27, 2011. The remaining bones showed uneven fracture signs, most likely from impact after the vehicle fell, but no mechanical injuries corresponding to a high-speed traffic accident. The rib bone surfaces had a thin black soot layer, indicating heat exposure before long-term mud immersion. The vehicle's mechanical section was examined separately. The engine compartment was scorched near the fuel cap, while the fuel line system was detached, showing signs of disassembly. The technical report described burn marks concentrated on the upper engine compartment, where no spontaneous heat source existed, only possible from direct gasoline pouring. On the hood surface, paint peeled in halo patterns, indicating short-term fire flare-up, then extinguished when the vehicle fell into wet ground. Chemical testing confirmed the presence of C7, C9 hydrocarbons, characteristic of late 60s automotive fuel. The report concluded, gasoline burn signs at positions inconsistent with collision mechanism, ruling out accident-related fire. In the cabin, the recovered scissors were cleaned and analyzed for traces. Under the rust, technicians detected dark oxidation streaks, testing weakly positive for hemoglobin, identifying old blood traces. Due to sample degradation, full DNA extraction was impossible, but chemical composition matched human blood. On the metal handle, faint fingerprints remained, insufficient for automatic matching but potentially recoverable via laser scanning. Additionally, a fabric section adhering to the blade had fiber structure matching material recovered from seat crevices, confirming the same source. The driver's side door frame was scorched, with steel edge indented inward, suggesting strong external impact before fire exposure. The vehicle's braking system was intact, no mechanical failures, indicating normal operation before the fall. Experts reconstructed the accident model using 3D software, determining Crescent Beach terrain lacked sufficient slope for the vehicle to slide on its own. For the vehicle to fall into the discovered position required initial external pushing force. Combined with 1969 rainfall and humidity data, the chance of self-drift was nearly zero. The FDLE's comprehensive technical report, signed October 3, 2011, affirmed red 1968 Cadillac DeVille, plate FL68D241, owned by Rachel Holloway, subjected to external mechanical force leading to fall into low-lying area, followed by localized gasoline fire. No technical faults or random factors detected. In the conclusion section, the forensic expert wrote, "Not an accident. Physical signs indicate intentional act leading to death." Copies of the report were sent to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office and the Florida State Investigation Office the same day, marking the Rachel Holloway missing person case, after more than 42 years, officially transitioning from missing person file to unsolved criminal homicide case. On October 10, 2011, after receiving the forensic report from Jacksonville, confirming that the Cadillac found at Crescent Beach showed signs of intentional tampering, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement officially took over the case. The decision to reopen the file was signed by the North Florida Regional Investigations Director, assigning the task to Detective Michael Reddick, who had previously handled numerous cold cases for the state. Reddick arrived in St. Augustine during the first week to work with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office and take custody of all related documents, including 2 original paper file volumes preserved from 1969. At the Jacksonville storage facility, he requested that file 69 MA 241 be brought up from the basement and conducted a page-by-page inventory. The file cover had yellowed, the paper edges were dusty, and the ink from the original note-taker was nearly faded. Reddick photographed the entire contents and entered the data into the FDLE's cold case management system. The review lasted 3 consecutive days, focusing on contradictions between the 1969 statements and newly discovered scene evidence. He noted that Todd Holloway's statement transcript lacked the confirming signature of a second investigator, and the recorded time did not match the duty log for that night. A small detail in Mark Stevens' report also caught his attention. The note strong gasoline smell in garage, fuel siphoning hose, placed against wall, had never been sent to the forensics department. Reddick marked it in red ink, noting not chemically tested. In the scene description table, he discovered a photograph of an oil spill with a cropped corner. The photo edge was labeled #liquid03, but the evidence list only included #liquid02, indicating a missing or misentered sample. When reviewing the 1970 inventory catalog, he found the note Fuel 05 missing, precisely the gasoline sample collected from the swamp, reinforcing suspicions that the old data was incomplete. Additionally, Rosa Delgado's witness interrogation record had two versions, a handwritten summary by Stevens and a typed version with edits, in which the time Rachel left the house was changed from before 7 o'clock to after 8 o'clock. Reddick prepared a separate memo on this discrepancy. He also requested a review of Todd Holloway's military personnel file, discovering that the individual had served at Eglin Air Force Base, discharged in 1959, with a psychological profile of stress level B, not serious, but noting impulsive behavior. In the old financial reports, Reddick found a photocopy of Rachel's life insurance policy valued at $150,000, with Todd as the sole beneficiary. Although this detail appeared in the 1969 report, it had not been cross-referenced with the payout timing. He sent a request to the finance department to search payout records, confirming that the insurance money was disbursed in December 1970 through a bank in Atlanta, coinciding with Todd's departure from Florida. This was the first time financial data was linked to the vehicle's physical evidence. After 7 days, Reddick completed a 42-page summary of details overlooked in the initial investigation. He divided them into 3 groups: unexamined physical evidence, discrepancies in reports, and uninvestigated financial motives. The summary's conclusion stated, based on the 2011 forensic results and 1969 archived file, there is sufficient basis to consider Rachel Holloway's disappearance as an intentional criminal act. Recommend restarting the investigation, verifying witnesses and related subjects. The proposal was forwarded to the FDLE regional director and approved the same day, officially reopening case 69 MA 241 after more than 42 years since it was classified as inactive case. On October 20, 2011, after completing the summary of errors in the initial investigation, Detective Michael Reddick moved to the phase of processing old evidence. The samples stored in the Jacksonville evidence locker for over 40 years were resealed and transferred to the FDLE's Tallahassee Criminal Forensics Center for scanning with modern equipment. The evidence box contained 11 intact sealed packages, including the scissors recovered at Crescent Beach and various metal fragments, glass, oil-stained fabric, along with original 1969 scene photographs. The primary goal was to search for usable fingerprints and cross-reference them with military databases to establish a link between Todd Holloway and the evidence. Reddick collaborated with the biometrics technician team using high-resolution laser fingerprint scanning technology to recover latent prints under rust layers. The process began with the scissors, cleaned with a special solution to remove oxidation without damaging the surface structure. As the rust flaked off, the shiny metal appeared, and technicians used a portable scanner to scan both sides of the handle. After multiple scans, the system displayed a series of faint loop pattern ridges marked partial latent 1. This print was digitally extracted and enhanced using ridge reconstruction algorithms. Experts then compared it to the National IAF's fingerprint database and U.S. military records stored at the Department of Defense. After nearly 3 hours of processing, the results showed 85 matching points with Todd A. Holloway's fingerprint sample. Military file code AF 14729, collected in 1956 upon enlistment at Eglin Base. The match probability was 99.2%, exceeding the standard identification threshold of 80 points. The system's automatic report clearly stated, match identified, source USAF personnel file, Todd Allen Holloway, born 1933. Reddick requested manual cross-verification, with 2 independent experts confirming the similarity. He signed the memo, noting Todd Holloway's fingerprint detected on scissors handle, recovered at Crescent Beach scene, evidence #CB 2011-04. This discovery marked the first major breakthrough in the file after reopening. However, to ensure legality, FDLE required a 2-step verification process, rescanning the evidence with different technology and comparing with a new suspect fingerprint sample. Reddick contacted the Air Force Biometrics Data Office, requesting the original 1956 fingerprint card copy for direct comparison with the newly recovered digital image. 3 days later, the fingerprint card arrived, printed on pale yellow specialty paper, still bearing the blue Eglin base ink stamp. Under optical lighting, the loop ridges on the right index finger matched exactly with the scissors scan. 2 independent experts signed off on absolute similarity. Simultaneously, Reddick ordered the same method for all other evidence, especially glass fragment glass 01 and fabric piece A2 collected from the Holloway garage in 1969. Results showed no fingerprints on the glass, but fabric A2 retained old sweat traces. Protein analysis indicated O-positive blood type, matching Todd's recorded military medical blood type. Additionally, the 2011 excavated Cadillac doorframe was scanned for mechanical marks. Under the burned paint, dents and slides were reconstructed, showing grip marks on the driver's door handle in an outward direction, not inward, as in a driver escaping. The interim summary report clearly stated, Todd Holloway's fingerprint matches evidence #CB 2011-04. Mechanical marks on driver's door consistent with external opening. No evidence supporting accident hypothesis. Reddick reviewed all data, requesting the tech lab to archive original photos, scans, comparison samples, and independent verifications in the digital file for the indictment phase. In his personal notebook he wrote, "The first piece of the chain missed in 1969 finally has shape." He sent the 15-page report to the FDLE regional director, recommending validation of the discovery. The same day, FDLE representatives approved transferring the file to federal level to ensure national forensic standards, while proposing collection of Todd Holloway's new fingerprints for comparison. Reddick compiled a list of next steps: 1. Cross-reference old sample with current AFAS data, 2. Request order for new sample collection, 3. Reconstruct evidence chain, ensuring legal continuity. He closed the document stack, looking at the black and white photo of the scissors on the metal table, the evidence that had lain dormant for over 40 years, but still held the answer. As the workday ended, Reddick placed the report in an envelope marked pending comparison, subject, T.A. Holloway, and sealed it with FDLE's red stamp, preparing for the official comparison phase that would decide the fate of the case forgotten for over 4 decades. On October 28, 2011, after completing the old evidence examination phase and confirming the fingerprint match with Todd Holloway, Detective Michael Reddick proceeded to the next step: reconstructing the incident scene based on 1969 terrain data. He collaborated with FDLE's spatial technology team and University of Florida geography experts to recreate the entire Matanzas Bay, Crescent Beach area at the time of the disappearance. The 1969 military topographic map was photocopied from the USGS archive, clearly showing a 1A routes, the old Matanzas Bridge, and the dirt road leading to the bay where the Holloway house once stood. Combined with current satellite imagery, the team built a 3D model on geophysical software, inputting slope, soil moisture, and stratigraphic data. The goal was to determine if the Cadillac could slide from the dirt road into the swamp without external force. Reddick observed, as the model displayed very slight terrain incline, with a slope of only 4.3 degrees, far below the 12 degrees needed for a 2-ton vehicle to move unpowered. The simulation showed that in rainy conditions, tire mud friction was sufficient to keep the vehicle stationary. It could not drift more than 2 meters without push. The tech team input meteorological data for June 14, 1969, from NOAA archives, confirming average rainfall of 12 mm, northeast winds at 14 miles per hour, not strong enough to displace a large object. In the second simulation run, assuming released brakes, gravity and slope generated a maximum slide speed of 0.9 miles per hour, unable to propel the vehicle beyond 10 meters, while the actual discovery site was over 200 meters from the last stop point. This data confirmed the vehicle could not slide into the swamp on its own. Reddick requested the experts add collision mechanics analysis to determine impact direction. They used the excavated frame model, measuring deformation at the front, identifying the main bend on the left side, directed from rear to front. This could only occur if the vehicle was pushed hard from behind near the left rear axle. Estimated force equivalent to another vehicle push or direct impact from an accelerating one. The simulation report stated minimum impact force 2,400 newtons, equivalent to a 1.9-ton vehicle at 5.7 kilometers per h. Burn marks and hood deformation matched the hypothesis of gasoline poured after the drop, not engine explosion. The team combined old weather images and tide maps to identify low-lying areas at the time, finding Crescent Beach in 1969 had lower water levels than now, meaning the vehicle was pushed into damp but not flooded land, then buried gradually over years by rain and floods. For verification, Reddick had a physical model set up in the field, with an equivalent vehicle, adjusting weight and slope per records. With brakes released and placed in the assumed position, the vehicle remained completely stationary, only strong pushing from behind moved it a few meters. In the test, force gauges measured nearly matching the simulation figures, reinforcing the conclusion of intentional push for the Cadillac to leave the road and drop into the low area. Mechanics experts also found Rachel's front wheels in straight position, indicating no steering turn during movement, ruling out driver avoidance of obstacles. The left frame door dent proved the driver's door opened before full stop, inconsistent with accident victim behavior. The ground behind showed long slide marks but no brake grooves, meaning wheels did not rotate during movement, only possible if pushed with engine off. Combining all data, Reddick and the experts wrote in the 63-page summary report. Scene reconstruction results show Rachel Holloway's Cadillac DeVille was subjected to external rear force while engine off. Estimated drop angle 37 degrees, initial speed under 10 kilometers per h, then slid additional 9.4 meters before stopping. No signs of driver active control. The report also highlighted discrepancies in the 1969 accepted accident hypothesis: 1. No data proving road slope sufficient for self-slide. 2. Gasoline burns post-stop. 3. Vehicle position 15 degrees off main road direction. 4. No corresponding injuries on victim remains for high-speed impact. Reddick personally typed the conclusion in the FDLE submission. All physical data confirm Rachel Holloway's Cadillac could not self-move to Crescent Beach area. Vehicle pushed under intentional conditions, not accident. On November 3, 2011, the report was signed by the Tech Lab director and archived in the Cold Case Unit system under new file code FL69CRUP in 2011. Leaving the lab, Reddick stood before the large-screen 3D scene model, the red vehicle image slowly falling amid recreated terrain, trajectory curve glowing on the geographic map. From a technical view, all data converged on one direction. The 1969 incident was not a sudden accident in the rain, but a calculated act, executed by intentional push, sending the Cadillac off the road and disappearing for over 4 decades under the mud along Matanzas Bay. On November 10, 2011, after completing the scene reconstruction report, Detective Michael Reddick began re-verifying surviving witnesses from the 1969 file. From the original St. Johns County Sheriff's list, only one remained in the old Matanzas Bay residential area, Mrs. Rosa Delgado, then the neighbor across from the Holloways. Reddick located her new address in Gainesville suburbs, where she lived with her retired daughter. Delgado was 81, petite, silver-haired, with weak eyesight but sharp memory. When Reddick showed his FDLE badge and explained the visit's purpose, she paused long, then nodded agreement to answer. The interview took place in the small living room, recorded and minuted per protocol. Reddick started with basic questions on timing, location, and events she recalled from the evening of June 14, 1969. Rosa said it was muggy. She went out to water plants around after 7 p.m., looking across to see Rachel cross the front porch, carrying a small purse, wearing a light green dress. She was not hurried, walking slowly, and said hello upon seeing her. Rosa replied, then turned inside. A while later, as light rain started, she still stood under the eaves, seeing Todd Holloway in his yard, holding something long like a hose or stick, bending near the garage. Yellow porch light illuminated his white shirt and dark pants clearly. She said he stood there quite a while, then heard the engine start and headlights sweep through the palms. When Reddick probed details, Rosa confirmed Todd was not in the car when it left. She saw him step slowly back, then car lights shone through him before the red Cadillac turned onto the road. Then she closed the door as rain poured. Asked why she hadn't mentioned this before, Rosa said, in 1969, she dared not speak. He was the only person I knew there. I feared trouble. Police came. I only said I saw Rachel leave, not the rest. Reddick asked why she remembered clearly now. She said that night caused sleepless days, the image of car lights and Todd in the rain haunted her. Hearing Reddick mention Rachel's car was found, she gripped the chair arms, paused, then whispered, I knew something was wrong that night. Reddick showed her a copy of the excavated Cadillac photo. She recognized the faded red paint, confirming exactly like Rachel's car. He asked if anyone else was with Todd that evening. She said no, only saw Holloway house lights on late. During the interview, Reddick placed the recorder mid-table, handwriting time notes. He realized the headlights sweeping through Todd could explain an unusual bright reflection in a 1969 scene photo from across, previously dismissed as lightning. At interview end, Delgado signed the minutes confirming and allowed FDLE use in official file. Afterward, Reddick contacted the Image Restoration Lab, requesting reprocessing of original scene photos to verify witness description. Results showed in the photo of the rear garage path at Holloway House on rainy night, exactly as Rosa said, a faint figure near the porch pillar reflecting headlight. Photo confirmed timed at 20:03 based on film clock. This data perfectly matched the timeline with gas station employee Larry Pierce, seeing Rachel fuel and leave about 15 minutes prior. A separate timeline comparison was prepared, proving Rosa Delgado's statement had factual basis. Reddick added this to the summary report. Witness Rosa Delgado confirmed seeing Todd Holloway in backyard around 1950, 20 o'clock on June 14, 1969, and witnessing Cadillac leave without him inside. This information absent from original 1969 statement. Statement recorded, signed, archived #FDLE int 1-12011. After minutes, Reddick sent digital copy and audio to FDLE Center for Voice Analysis, confirming authenticity. Audio forensics confirmed no edits or interruptions. With this new statement, the disappearance night event timeline expanded, showing Rachel left while Todd remained outside, which he previously denied. Leaving Gainesville, Reddick's final notebook note, sole surviving witness confirms Todd's presence at scene. This data will change the entire case structure. He closed the book, placed the audio tape in a sealed envelope, looking out the car window where sunset covered old trees. After over 40 years, the trembling voice of the woman, once silent from fear, became the final piece affirming what the 1969 investigation overlooked. Todd Holloway was in the backyard of the house by Matanzas Bay, exactly when the red Cadillac left and vanished. On November 15, 2011, after completing the verification of witness Rosa Delgado, Detective Michael Reddick shifted to the financial investigation direction to find an economic motive in the case. He began by reviewing the life insurance policy records of Rachel Holloway that the 1969 investigation team had preliminarily noted but not verified the payout timing. From the copy of the contract in the original file, Reddick noted that Rachel had signed a life insurance policy with Atlantic Mutual Life on March 3, 1968, with a policy value of $150,000, the sole beneficiary being her husband, Todd A. Holloway. The contract stipulated that the beneficiary rights could not be transferred except with the signatures of both spouses, and the payout clause in the event of death by accident would be executed within 1 year from the issuance of the death certificate. Since in 1969, Rachel was recorded as missing with undetermined cause, not qualifying for payment, Reddick questioned how Todd had received that money. He sent a request to retrieve the payout records from the storage system of Atlantic Mutual, now merged into Florida National Insurance. After 2 weeks of waiting, the company's legal department responded that the original paper records were stored in a warehouse in Tallahassee. Reddick personally went to the company's old headquarters, where thousands of old insurance contracts were stored in dusty metal boxes. He and the archivist searched by contract code AM 68124 and found a thin file consisting of 3 claim forms. The first form clearly recorded the payment date as December 4, 1970. Recipient Todd A. Holloway, amount $150,000, signed for receipt at the Southern Trust Bank branch in Atlanta. Attached was a copy of a provisional death certificate confirmed by St. Johns County in October 1970 at the beneficiary's request, with the note victim missing for more than 12 months, considered deceased under Missing Persons Clause. Below the certification signature was the name of a local attorney representing Todd in this procedure, Robert G. Linton. Reddick realized that the issuance of the death certificate was done under administrative regulations without a court decision. He contacted the county civil office to verify the original records and discovered that the entire procedure was filed on the same day, with confirmation from the sheriff newly in office in 1970, who at that time only reviewed the old files without further investigation. Todd had used the missing for over 12 months clause to request the insurance payout. Reddick immediately requested the FDLEL financial department to trace the money flow related to the payment. Through the archived data of Southern Trust Bank, he discovered the receiving account in the name of T.A. Holloway, opened on November 15, 1970, existing for only 6 months. During that time, the account recorded 3 large cash withdrawals, $25,000, $60,000, and $65,000. After the third withdrawal, the account was closed in June 1971, coinciding with the time Todd left Florida. There were no records of transfers or investments. Most of the cash was withdrawn directly at the counter. Reddick noted in the report, the $150,000 payout was fully withdrawn within 6 months, with no trace of legal use, no income tax declaration. When reviewing Todd's 1971 tax return, he discovered the permanent address had been changed to Georgia, then disappeared from the federal system for nearly 10 years. This was strong evidence that after receiving the insurance money, Todd had deliberately cut all legal ties with Florida. Reddick continued searching for additional documents on the insurance contract. An internal memo from Atlantic Mutual noted that the policy was renewed twice in 1969, each premium payment made by Todd. That proved he maintained the policy even after Rachel went missing, seemingly having planned in advance to use it. In the file was also a handwritten letter from Todd to the insurance company in August 1970, writing, "My wife has been missing for over a year. I was advised to proceed with death certification to stabilize finances and raise the children." The letter was neatly typed, calm in tone, attached with copies of the 2 children's tuition certificates, showing he had prepared thoroughly to legitimize the money. Reddick requested the Language Analysis Department to evaluate the letter's content. The results showing the writing style and sentence structure closely resembled an administrative form, with no emotional expression, unusual for someone who had just lost his wife. When reviewing the list of 1971 expenses, Reddick discovered Todd had bought back an old light aircraft and a small stake in a civil aviation company in Atlanta, exactly where he worked a few years later. The investigator noted, investment source corresponds to the insurance amount, thus, The insurance money flow was used to build a new life, not at all for family care purposes, as stated in the letter. In the summary report sent to the regional director, Reddick wrote, "All financial evidence shows Todd Holloway had a clear economic motive. Maintaining the insurance policy, proactively requesting the death certificate, and withdrawing the money in a short time demonstrate a calculated plan. The $150,000 USD in 1970 is equivalent to over $900,000 USD today, enough to be a strong motive for criminal behavior." Copies of the bank documents and insurance contract were digitally backed up, encrypted in file FL69, CR Ropin 2011 APN Dix Fine. When closing the document file, Reddick added the final line in his work log. 42 years ago, no one examined that 150,000 figure. Now, it is the key unlocking the entire motive. This discovery completely reinforced his hypothesis that Rachel Holloway's disappearance was not an accident, but the result of a prepared act for economic purposes, closing the financial investigation phase of the case. On November 22, 2011, after completing the financial report confirming the case's economic motive, Detective Michael Reddick submitted a proposal to surveil the main subject, Todd Allen Holloway, now 78 years old, residing in Sacramento, California. The residency records were retrieved from federal Social Security data and a driver's license issued in 2007. He lived alone in a third-floor apartment in a retirement complex, address 4225 Franklin Boulevard. Reddick coordinated with the FDLE Western Regional Office and the FBI Sacramento branch to implement a covert surveillance plan. The goal was to verify health status, daily lifestyle, and collect DNA samples for comparison with old evidence to strengthen the legal basis before requesting an arrest warrant. On November 25, a two-person surveillance team was dispatched to the complex, installing a small camera on a lamppost opposite the apartment door and recording Todd's daily habits, early morning walks around the grounds, buying a newspaper, returning around 7:30 afternoons to the nearby supermarket, often using an old silver Buick, California license plate, 3GJ471. Neighbors described him as polite, quiet, sometimes talking about his time in the Air Force, with no family visiting. Reddick flew to Sacramento in early December to directly coordinate. He and FBI Special Agent Sheila Harmon went to the complex, renting an apartment on the floor below for observation. In the first 3 days, Todd maintained a regular routine, showing no signs of anxiety or suspicion of being followed. On the 4th day, when Todd went out for exercise, Harmon secretly entered the apartment to collect bathroom trash under special surveillance authority. Inside the trash bag, they found a toothbrush, a few hairs stuck on a comb, and a disposable razor. All were placed in sterile plastic bags, sealed, and immediately transferred to the FBI Sacramento lab for DNA extraction. A week later, the identification results were sent to FDLE. The hair sample matched completely with the genetic sample from the evidence scissors recovered at Crescent Beach, with 99.97% similarity. The report concluded, male DNA on the evidence matches Todd Allen Holloway's sample. Error probability less than 1 in 10 billion. This result meant the biological trace on the evidence once considered unidentifiable now had an owner. Reddick immediately prepared a supplemental memorandum, encoding the results under file FL69, CR Upin 2011 Bio, sending it in parallel to FDLEL and the Florida State Prosecutor's Office. In the description section, he clearly noted, DNA source matches suspect, original evidence from Rachel Holloway death scene, ensuring continuous chain of custody from 2011. Upon reviewing all collected data, Reddick saw that all technical elements had converged: fingerprints on the scissors, biological DNA, witness statements, and economic motive. However, to avoid leaking information, the arrest warrant was not yet issued until final confirmation from FDLE headquarters. While waiting, the surveillance team continued monitoring Todd's behavior. They noted he often sat reading the newspaper in the park next to the complex, attended the local church on Sunday mornings. Once Todd chatted with a neighbor about hearing old news from Florida, a statement that caught Reddick's attention. Immediately after, he requested a review of Todd's long-distance call logs, discovering 2 calls to an unregistered phone number in Jacksonville on December 8 and 10, each lasting less than 2 minutes. Location data showed the calls originated from the landline in the apartment, using an old telecom network, unable to trace the recipient's identity. The timing coincidence made Reddick suspect Todd knew about the car excavation. He proposed intensifying surveillance and requesting a voluntary interrogation warrant. On December 20th, Todd was invited to the FBI Sacramento office under the pretext of verifying old military records. He arrived on time, calm, neatly dressed, still maintaining the demeanor of a former military man. When staff asked to take fingerprints for veteran record comparison, Todd agreed without hesitation. The obtained fingerprint sample was immediately sent to FDLE Tallahassee. 3 days later, the results confirmed an absolute match with the print on the scissors handle. The supplemental technical report signed on December 23, 2011, officially validated all physical evidence in the case. Reddick reread the conclusion section, sitting silently for a long time. After more than 4 decades, the scattered evidence chain from 1969 had finally been connected by technology and persistence. In his personal log, he wrote, "No doubt left. DNA, fingerprints, statements, and finances all point to the same person." That same evening, he called the FDLE regional director to report, voice low but firm, "We have it all." Outside the window, Sacramento was shrouded in fog, streetlights reflecting on the damp glass. Across the country in Florida, a once-forgotten case file had fully awakened. On January 3, 2012, after the DNA and fingerprint comparison results were absolutely confirmed, Detective Michael Reddick submitted the entire investigation file to the Florida State Prosecutor's Office, accompanied by a report over 100 pages, proving a continuous, valid chain of evidence and an irrefutable conclusion about Todd Allen Holloway's direct involvement in Rachel Holloway's death. The state prosecutor's office reviewed the file within 2 days, holding a closed meeting with representatives from FDLE, FBI, and the forensic advisor from the U.S. Department of Justice. On January 5, the Florida State Chief Prosecutor signed approval for a federal arrest warrant, charging Todd Holloway with first-degree murder with premeditation and concealment by staging an accident. The warrant was numbered FLCR 2012-047, effective immediately nationwide. The Federal Bureau of Investigation coordinated with FDLE to develop an action plan, codenamed Operation Matanzas, to ensure safe arrest of the elderly subject with a military background. The execution team was divided into 3 groups: a main group responsible for approach, a support group for area control, and a technical group to record the entire process for legal evidence. On January 8, 2012, at 5:45 a.m., the coordinated force, including 4 FBI agents and 2 FDLE investigators, arrived at the Franklin Court Retirement Complex in Sacramento. Todd's apartment was still lit. He was recorded waking early every day. Reddick was present in the surveillance vehicle 2 buildings away, maintaining contact via encrypted radio. When the clock showed 6:02 minutes, the approach team proceeded as planned. Agent Harmon knocked on the main door, identifying as United States Postal Service to avoid panic, while 2 other agents stood on either side of the hallway. The door opened. Todd appeared, wearing a sweater and pajama pants, holding a coffee cup. When Harmon said, "Mr. Holloway, please remain calm, we have an arrest warrant," Todd froze momentarily, his eyes shifting from surprise to coldness. He set the cup down on a small table near the door, asking in a hoarse voice, "Florida?" The short statement silenced the entire team for a few seconds. Harmon clearly read the warrant contents, stating the charges and right to silence. Todd did not resist, only nodded, extending his hands forward. The cuffs were locked on his wrists, the steel glinting in the morning light through the doorframe. An accompanying medical team confirmed stable blood pressure, Then Todd was led to the agent vehicle parked in front of the complex. Residents in the building watched through windows, some recognizing the elderly neighbor who greeted them every morning. Reddick stepped out of the surveillance vehicle, approaching as Todd was brought out. The two men eyed each other briefly, without words. On the way to the FBI Sacramento office, Todd sat silently, eyes directed outside, hands on his lap, asking only once, "Where did you find the car?" Harmon replied, "Crescent Beach." He nodded slightly, saying no more. At headquarters, he was read the Miranda rights again, signing confirmation of understanding. The entire arrest process was recorded, stored in file hash FL 2012 MA Kansas. That same afternoon, the Florida prosecutor's office sent an official extradition request to the federal court in California. The preliminary hearing took place on January 10 at the Eastern District Court of California. The FBI representative presented DNA evidence, fingerprints, and financial motive. The appointed public defender did not oppose extradition, citing the client's advanced age, poor health, and willingness to cooperate. The judge ruled to approve the extradition request to Florida under Section 3182 of the Federal Code, setting a transfer deadline within 7 days. Reddick personally participated in the escort, accompanying 2 federal agents. On January 14, Todd was placed on a special commercial flight from Sacramento to Jacksonville, under continuous supervision. Throughout the 6-hour flight, he said nothing, only occasionally looking out the window as the plane flew over the eastern seaboard, where Rachel's Cadillac had once been found. Upon landing at Jacksonville International Airport, local police vehicles were waiting. Todd was taken directly to the St. Johns County Detention Center, where he had lived 40 years earlier. That evening, Reddick completed the arrest memorandum, sending it to the state prosecutor's office, along with a summary report of the entire process from evidence discovery to warrant execution. The final line in the report read, "Arrest warrant for Todd Allen Holloway, executed successfully at 6:12 a.m. on January 8, 2012, in Sacramento, California." Subject did not resist, accepted extradition. Case File 69 MA 241 changed status from cold cases to active prosecution. That night, the Franklin Court Retirement Complex returned to quiet. Apartment 3B, where Todd had lived, was sealed, the small room still holding the unfinished coffee cup on the table, the last drop of a life that seemed to have escaped the past, but ultimately was pulled back to Florida, where it all began. On January 16, 2012, 2 days after being extradited to Florida, Todd Allen Holloway was brought to the special interrogation room of FDLE in Jacksonville. The room was spacious, with light gray walls, white lights shining directly down on the metal table, surveillance cameras recording the entire session. Detective Michael Reddick and the case prosecutor, Allison Graves, directly led the session. Todd sat opposite, thin but still maintaining a calm demeanor, hands placed on the table, eyes not avoiding contact. Reddick began by confirming identity and rereading the Miranda rights. Todd nodded, saying softly, "I understand." When asked about the night of June 14, 1969, he recounted slowly, voice steady. "It was a terrible accident. Rachel left the house in anger. I heard the car engine start, ran after her. She lost control on the slippery road. I tried to save her, but was too late." Reddick paused for a few seconds, then placed on the table a set of newly excavated scene photos. The rusted red Cadillac frame, gasoline burn marks, and the cleaned scissors. He said, "The car didn't skid, Todd. It was pushed. And this, your DNA is on the evidence, on the scissors found in the car." Todd looked down at the photos, fingers trembling slightly, but voice still even. "Impossible. I would never harm her," we argued, "but I loved my wife." Graves interjected, presenting the forensic report, pointing out fuel burn traces, matching fingerprints, and hair samples with his DNA legally collected from Sacramento. Upon hearing that, Todd looked up, lips pressed, then shook his head slowly. "I don't know where that stuff came from. Fuel leak, old car, That's normal. Reddick opened a 3-day reconstructed scene map, pointing to the impact force simulation model, causing the car to fall into the Crescent Beach area. This is the fall angle, impossible without someone driving or pushing from behind. That's intentional action. Todd looked at the model, eyes blank, then said softly, "You're reconstructing the truth wrong. I didn't push the car. Rachel lost control. She was desperate before." Reddick responded slowly, each word clear. "If it was an accident, why not report to police? Why did you receive $150,000 in insurance with a fake death certificate after she went missing?" Todd fell silent. After a moment he replied, "I needed money to raise the kids. I thought she left, wasn't alive anymore. I just did what was necessary." Graves placed on the table a copy of the handwritten letter to the insurance company with his signature. "This letter isn't written like from someone grieving, Todd. It's typed, administrative structure, no errors. You planned it." Todd looked down at his hands, knuckles white. He said slowly, "I'm not a murderer. Rachel had her own issues. She said she wanted to leave me." Reddick leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You were in the yard that night. Rosa Delgado saw you. The car light shone through you as the Cadillac left the house. Do you want to explain why not?" Todd looked up, breathing heavily, then only said, "I went out to check the rain. That's all." Reddick looked at him for a long time, then turned on the recorder, playing a short audio clip of Rosa's statement, old but clear voice. "I saw him standing there, in the rain, as Rachel's car drove out the gate." The sound echoed softly in the room. Todd closed his eyes, hands gripping the table edge tightly. After a long silence, Graves continued. "Technical evidence, witnesses, finances, all match. Do you have anything else to say?" Todd opened his eyes, looking straight at Reddick. "No, I've said everything. If you believe otherwise, prove it." Reddick nodded, noting, "Subject refuses further answers, invokes right to silence." Then he closed the file, signaling the end of the interrogation. Todd was led back to the holding cell, face cold and expressionless. As the steel door closed, Reddick stood watching through the glass panel, still holding the scene photo. He wrote the final line in the memorandum: "Suspect continues to deny murder, insists accident. Remained silent after confronting DNA and financial evidence. Limited emotional reaction, shows control." In the long empty hallway, Reddick slowly closed the notebook, knowing this interrogation was not to seek a confession, but to record the moment Todd Holloway first faced the full truth. Evidence of science, time, and guilt that had slumbered for over 40 years. On January 20th, 2012, 3 days after the formal interrogation, FDLE began the phase of compiling all evidence to prepare the transfer of the file to the Florida State Attorney's Office for indictment. Detective Michael Reddick served as the team leader for compilation, responsible for coordinating with technical, forensic, financial, and witness units to ensure a legal, uninterrupted chain of evidence. In the FDLE Jacksonville office, 5 evidence boxes were lined up on a large table, each numbered by evidence group: physical, biological, financial, witness, and scene reconstruction. Reddick directed a review of each section, the DNA appraisal by Todd Holloway, cross-referenced with evidence. #SHB 2011-04, fingerprints, matching military records, crime scene photos, and 3D simulation models. Confirming the car was pushed, witness Rosa Delgado's statement confirming Todd's presence at the home on the night of the disappearance, along with all life insurance documents and 1970 withdrawal account records. Each item was separately numbered, arranged in chronological order to create a logical sequence of events from the 1969 disappearance to the 2011 chassis discovery. The official report was 246 pages long, with the investigation summary highlighting 3 key points. First, physical evidence, proving intentional action. Second, biological evidence, directly linking Todd to the scene. Third, financial evidence, clarifying motive. FDLE legal advisors reviewed the chain of custody validity, ensuring no sealing procedure violations. All documents bore signatures from technicians who handled each phase. On January 25, the file was officially transferred to the state attorney's office in Tallahassee. Chief Prosecutor Allison Graves chaired the prosecution meeting, with the legal team reviewing the entire file over 3 days. They analyzed the act, motive, and circumstances, agreeing that Todd Holloway's actions satisfied the elements of premeditated murder with calculation and financial motive. Graves drafted a 32-page preliminary indictment describing the case in sequence. Rachel Holloway was murdered on the evening of June 14, 1969. Her body concealed by staging a car accident into the Crescent Beach swamp. The suspect deliberately ignited fuel to create a false scene, then received a $150,000 insurance payout through forged death certificate procedures. The indictment cited Section 782.041 of the Florida Criminal Code, defining first-degree murder in cases involving premeditation and pecuniary gain. Additionally, Graves added 2 aggravating factors: 1, evidence concealment causing the case to stall for over 4 decades. 2, exploitation of legal provisions for financial gain. After approval by the state attorney's office, the indictment was filed with the St. Johns County Circuit Court on January 30, 2012, officially initiating criminal prosecution. That day, Reddick was present in Tallahassee to sign the transfer minutes, witnessing the court's red seal affixed to the file. Upon signing, he glanced at the clear plastic cover where State of Florida versus Todd Allen Holloway was boldly printed. Below it the subtitle, Charge First-Degree Murder. Rachel M. Holloway. The indictment clearly requested trial with the maximum sentence under state law, while preserving all original evidence provided by FDLE as court exhibits. That same night, Reddick returned to the Jacksonville office, sitting silently in his workspace, staring at the final notepad fully crossed out. Under the dim light, he wrote the closing entry, "All final pieces have fit." The Holloway file officially transitions from investigation complete to prosecution phases: charge, first-degree murder, financial motive, intentional act. After more than 42 years, the Rachel Holloway case had entered the phase that 4 decades earlier, no one thought it would reach. The phase where justice begins to speak. On February 10, 2012, the first technical hearing in the case of State of Florida versus Todd Allen Holloway was held at the St. Johns County Circuit Court. The purpose of this hearing was not to examine the charge, but to confirm the legal value and integrity of all evidence collected by FDLE, including DNA data, fingerprints, and digital scene simulations. The courtroom was packed with reporters, as this was a rare cold case revived after over 40 years. Todd Holloway was brought to court in a gray prison jumpsuit, his face gaunt but still alert. The prosecution, represented by Allison Graves, presented first, starting with the main chain of evidence. Todd's DNA, matching the biological sample on evidence hash, CB 2011-04, fingerprints matching 85 comparison points with military file, AF 14729. 3D reconstruction model confirming external force caused the Cadillac to fall into Crescent Beach, and financial records proving the $150,000 insurance payout withdrawn just 6 months after the victim was declared dead. Graves presented each piece of evidence with images projected on a large screen, explaining the chain of custody starting from JI 1969. Sealed in the Jacksonville storage, then recovered and examined in 2011 under FDLE supervision. Every transport, scan, sampling, and comparison process had technician signatures. She affirmed, no link in the chain of custody was broken. All evidence was sealed to national forensic standards. The defense, handled by appointed public defender James Corbett, countered that storing evidence for over 40 years could cause data degradation, especially biological samples on oxidized metal. He requested the court consider the possibility of cross-contamination during the 2011 excavation. In response, the FDL representative presented a detailed technical report showing DNA extracted from the evidence was separated using laser spectroscopy, completely isolated from environmental impurities. A parallel analysis at two different labs, Jacksonville and Tallahassee, yielded 99.97% identical results, proving no error. Corbett continued to question the fingerprint validity due to laser scanning equipment potentially creating false images. Reddick, as the investigating witness, was called to the stand. He described the latent fingerprint discovery process, cleaning the metal with chemical solution, multi-layer laser scanning, then restoring the original fingerprint image before comparison with military records. He emphasized that the military comparison sample was an original 1956 ink print, verified by the Department of Defense. Two independent biometric experts also signed off on the match points. When the prosecution requested enlarged comparison photos, 85 matching points glowed clearly on the screen, each ridge perfectly aligned. The court noted the evidence as admissible and legal. The defense shifted to the scene simulation data, arguing the 3D model was merely mathematical assumption and could not replace physical evidence. Graves rebutted by showing a physical reconstruction video at Matanzas, demonstrating a car of equal weight to the Cadillac could not slide on the actual slope. The accompanying report included friction force and fall angle measurements, independently verified by University of Florida experts. After viewing the video, the judge noted, the simulation data has clear scientific basis, independently verified, and thus can be considered supporting evidence. At the end of the session, FDLE presented the continuous sealing chain from 1969 evidence collection, 1970 storage transfer, 2011 recovery, to examination, all with signatures and intact preservation seals. Graves read aloud the forensic report conclusion. No physical, biological, or chemical evidence indicates tampering or sample contamination. The chain of custody was maintained continuously for over 4 decades. Attorney Corbett acknowledged the file's rigor, but maintained that such a long time makes witness memories inaccurate. Graves replied succinctly, "We do not rely on memory. We rely on science." The hearing lasted nearly 8 hours. When the judge announced the interim conclusion, all technical evidence was recognized as legal and eligible for presentation at the formal trial. Todd sat silently, eyes downcast on the table, hands clasped in front of his chest. In the minutes, the court clerk wrote, "Technical hearing on February 10, 2012, confirms chain of custody integrity, DNA, fingerprint, and scene simulation evidence accepted for court use." Defense provided no valuable counter-evidence. As the courtroom lights dimmed, Reddick stepped into the hallway, holding the thick file. 42 years after the rainy night in Matanzas, science had finally completed what humans once overlooked, closing every technical gap so the truth could be brought to light in the upcoming trial. On February 18, 2012, at the request of the Florida State Attorney's Office, FDLE collaborated with the University of Florida Crime Scene Technology Department to conduct additional scientific analysis to reinforce conclusions on the fire cause and fall mechanism of the Cadillac DeVille in the Rachel Holloway case. The report was produced by a team of experts led by Dr. Carl Benson, specializing in explosion engineering and fluid mechanics. The reconstruction experiment was held at the Gainesville test site, using a 1:10 scale model accurately simulating the frame structure, weight, and fuel system design of a 1968 Cadillac. The technical team determined the original tank capacity was 26 gallons, located behind the rear axle, connected to the engine compartment by a rubber-sheathed steel pipe over 3 meters long. Based on burn marks found on the actual engine compartment, experts estimated residual fuel in the pipe at the time of fire was 0.8 to 1.2 gallons. Ignition tests with equivalent gasoline showed flames could only reach the hood surface if fuel was poured directly through the pipe or a separate canister, not forming naturally from leaks, since the system was not fully severed. The report stated clearly, the burn location on the engine frame corresponds to fuel pouring from the front, not matching rear tank leakage. Additionally, soot composition analysis on the hood via spectroscopy Tetraethyl lead additive, present only in 1960s automotive fuel, but at concentrations 4.6 times higher than natural residue, proving deliberate gasoline pouring on the surface. Regarding the fall mechanism, the technical team remeasured the Crescent Beach terrain using 1969 geological data and current surveys. The vehicle discovery area averaged 2.7 meters deep, in thick mud surrounded by mangrove roots. The slope from the road to the vehicle position was about 4.3 degrees, far below the threshold for self-sliding. Calculating friction between tires and wet ground, the coefficient mu reached 0.64, meaning a minimum push force of 2,500 newtons was needed for movement. With a 1.9-ton frame weight, the car could only reach the found position with external mechanical impact equivalent to a strong push from another vehicle or intentional operation. Dents on the left rear frame of the actual car showed perpendicular contact points, matching collision models when pushed while stationary. Geological analysis also indicated the area in 1969 had about 40 centimeters of water, meaning upon falling, the engine compartment did not submerge immediately, allowing brief burning before mud and water extinguished it. Thus, the experts concluded, the fire was not a collision consequence, but a controlled ignition reaction occurring before full submersion. They reconstructed the event sequence. The car was pushed from the dirt road into the depression, tail hitting ground first, front nosing down. The perpetrator opened the hood, poured gasoline directly and ignited it. As the fire weakened from lack of oxygen, it self-extinguished, and the car gradually sank into mud over years. The 42-page report was completed on February 22, 2012, sent to the state attorney's office and court with a summary. The fire mechanism demonstrates intentional action, not technical failure. Collision structure proves external force impact, inconsistent with self-sliding. Combining physical, chemical, and terrain results, we determine the 1969 Cadillac DeVille fire and fall cause as intentional acts to fabricate an accident scene. In the signature section, Dr. Benson added, "No natural scenario can simultaneously produce three factors: short-term engine fire, rear push marks, and stop position in shallow mud." Upon reading the report, Reddick wrote the final line in his notepad, "Science has concluded in place of a confession. No doubt left, Rachel did not die in an accident, but in an arranged plan." With this report, the Holloway case file gained the final technical evidence, solidly reinforcing the intentional act leading to death, officially completing the scientific basis for the upcoming trial phase. On April 2, 2012, after more than 2 months of trial and 12 consecutive sessions, the St. Johns County Circuit Court issued the final verdict in the case of State of Florida versus Todd Allen Holloway. The courtroom was sealed, with media allowed to film only the first 15 minutes, then required to leave when the jury began deliberations. Before sentencing, prosecutor Allison Graves reread the indictment. Defendant Todd Allen Holloway, born 1933, is charged with first-degree murder under Section 782.04(1) of the Florida Criminal Code, with elements of intent, calculation, and financial motive. The prosecution recapped the accepted evidence chain, fully matching fingerprints on the evidence, matching biological DNA, scientific reports proving intentional fire and collision mechanisms, along with witness Rosa Delgado's testimony, confirming the defendant's presence at the scene. The night Rachel Holloway disappeared, Graves said in her conclusion, "Justice may be slow, but it does not vanish. Time cannot erase traces of intentional acts." The defense, attorney James Corbett, in a final effort, requested the court consider mitigating factors due to advanced age and health, asserting his client always believed his wife's death was an accident and that scientific evidence cannot fully reflect human intent. Todd sat still, unresponsive, hands clasped on the table, eyes downcast. When Chief Judge Walter Keene announced the jury had completed discussions, the courtroom atmosphere grew heavy. He opened the thick file, reading slowly and clearly. Based on all verified physical, biological, financial, and scientific evidence, the court concludes defendant Todd Allen Holloway committed first-degree murder with calculation, pecuniary motive, intentionally staging the scene to conceal the crime. Todd looked up upon hearing his name, his gaze steady, no reaction. The judge continued. The court sentences defendant Todd Allen Holloway to life imprisonment without parole. Incarceration begins January 8, 2012. The defendant has no right to request reduction, pardon, or conditional release. In the silent moment after the pronouncement, only the steady hum of the recording device and a few coughs from the back row. Todd sat motionless, then slowly nodded slightly, as if the sentence no longer surprised him. Graves bowed her head, closing the file, while Reddick, seated in the FDLE section, silently gazed at the photo of Rachel Holloway inside the document cover. Outside the court, media waited, the first breaking news appearing on afternoon bulletins. After 43 years, justice for Rachel Holloway, husband sentenced to life. The next day, FDLE issued an official statement confirming the Holloway case status changed to closed in the cold case unit system, with note, solved by forensic and financial evidence. Reddick's internal summary report detailed the entire process from the 2011 chassis discovery to the court verdict, totaling over 1,200 pages. In the final section, he wrote, "After 43 years, every scattered detail has merged into truth. No doubt, no hypothesis, only justice and the silence of Matanzas Sea." Todd Holloway was transferred to Coleman Federal Prison in Sumter County that night, under state escort protection. As the convoy left the courthouse grounds, Reddick watched from the steps, light rain falling on the pavement. A case once buried had closed, not with a confession, but with science, time, and the persistence of those who believe justice, though late, can return. On April 30, 2012, 3 weeks after the life imprisonment sentence for Todd Holloway took effect, Detective Michael Reddick completed the final investigative report on the Holloway case, a document required by FDLE to compile the entire reinvestigation process and draw professional lessons from the case that had spanned more than 4 decades. The 128-page report, divided into 7 sections, focused on analyzing the reasons why the 1969 incident was overlooked and incorrectly marked as an inactive case. In the introduction, Reddick wrote, "The error was not in technology, but in the investigative thought process, when the initial hypothesis of accident was accepted without independent verification." He pointed out that the 1969 investigation team failed to conduct fuel analysis despite a clear gasoline smell in the garage, did not fully recover evidence from Matanzas Swamp, and most importantly, relied entirely on the victim's husband's statement without cross-referencing it with witness Rosa Delgado. In the chain of custody section, he emphasized that entering the wrong vehicle frame number when transferring files to the Jacksonville storage in 1970 caused the case to disappear from the automated system, leading to over 40 years without review. Reddick also noted the indirect responsibility of the legal system at the time for issuing a death certificate based solely on the duration of disappearance without forensic verification. He wrote, "The administrative system legalized a murder with its own stamp." The middle section of the report detailed the file recovery steps from discovering the vehicle frame after Hurricane Irene, excavating Crescent Beach, to DNA testing, fingerprint analysis, and financial records. Each step was illustrated with photos and technical diagrams for training purposes. In the chapter Application of Science in Cold Case Investigation, Reddick listed the technologies used: laser fingerprint scanning, degraded molecular DNA recovery, 3D terrain modeling, spectroscopic combustion analysis, and historical financial data chain matching algorithms. He proposed including the Holloway case in FDLE's training program as a prime example of evidence recovery across generations of storage. The report also highlighted the human factor. Technology does not find the truth on its own. It only assists those persistent enough to ask the right questions. In the conclusion, Reddick outlined 4 main lessons. 1. Never accept an accident hypothesis when doubt exists. 2. Evidence preservation procedures must be standardized with unique retrieval codes. 3. Missing persons files need periodic inventory to prevent data loss. 4. Reinvestigation must combine forensic science with economic motive, often overlooked in family cases. He ended with a short line: if in 1969 there had been one more question of why, perhaps 43 years later, we wouldn't need to answer it. On May 5, 2012, FDLEL approved the report and archived it internally under Code Training Archive hash FDLE CC 12 Holloway, classified as advanced training material on cold case investigation. A copy was sent to the Florida Justice Academy as required reading in detective training courses. In the attached memo, the regional director noted, the Reddick report becomes a model for restoring justice through modern forensic methods. When closing the document, Reddick wrote the final line in his notebook. The Holloway case ends not just with a sentence, but with a lesson for generations to come. No detail in a file is meaningless when the truth is still hiding. On June 20, 2012, 1 month after the Holloway summary report was approved and incorporated into the training program, FDLEL officially issued a comprehensive improvement plan for the cold case evidence storage system to address the errors that had caused the Holloway file to vanish from the database for 4 decades. The plan, coded Cold Evidence Integrity 2012, was implemented simultaneously at the state's 3 major storage centers, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, and Miami. The program's focus was applying electronic identification encryption and dual-layer digital storage, ensuring every piece of evidence could be instantly retrieved through the central system. All old evidence was required to be tagged with QR codes and 1.2 mm RFID chips containing case number, collection time, storage location, and responsible personnel. When evidence passed through checkpoints, the system automatically logged movement time and alerted if limits were exceeded. The project was led by the Forensic Technology Division, coordinating with data security units to build role-specific access interfaces. Simultaneously, FDLE launched digitization of all paper files from 1950 to 1995 using high-resolution optical scanners, with each file converted to a PDF with electronic signatures stored in the cold case cloud at the Tallahassee Center. Every file had a unique identifier, for example CC 1969, 241 for the Holloway case, preventing duplicates. Additionally, evidence sealing procedures were rewritten to new federal standards, specifying that each unsealing required signatures from 3 levels: technician, supervisor, and lead investigator. All sealing, unsealing, transport, and analysis actions were recorded by security cameras with a minimum 10-year retention. FDLE also signed an agreement with the National Archives for periodic backups to a secondary facility in Orlando, in case of natural disasters or primary system damage. Biological samples were transferred to liquid nitrogen chambers at -150 degrees Celsius, with sensors alerting for fluctuations over 2 degrees. In the project launch report, the FDLE technical director stated, "The goal is to ensure no evidence in the state of Florida can be lost or become untraceable within the system's lifespan." The plan was based on recommendations in the Reddick report, especially unique retrieval codes and integrating databases for evidence, DNA, and finances. By the end of 2012, over 18,000 cold case files were digitized and entered into the new system, including the Holloway file, now labeled Case Closed, Archived Secure. In the December periodic audit, FDLE announced a 100% successful retrieval rate with no mismatched evidence codes. A brief press conference was held in Tallahassee, where the FDLE director declared, "The Holloway case made us realize that justice comes not only from the courtroom, but starts in the storage cabinet. One wrong entry can lose an entire life." From then on, the cold evidence integrity process became a mandatory operating standard for Florida's entire criminal justice system, referenced and adopted by other states. In the new storage facility, Old metal boxes were replaced with composite trays with electronic codes, LED lights reflecting thousands of revived case codes from rotting paper piles. Proof of progress from the bitter lesson of 1969 to an era where every piece of evidence, no matter how old, still has its own voice in the pursuit of truth. On September 15, 2013, more than a year after the Cold Evidence Integrity System went live, FDLE held a statewide professional conference in Tallahassee to summarize the Holloway case investigation experience and evaluate the storage improvement program's effectiveness. The conference gathered over 200 representatives from local police departments, prosecutors' offices, forensic agencies, and justice academies. On the main stage, Detective Michael Reddick, who directly investigated and recovered the case file, presented the keynote From Silence to Proof, reconstructing a 43-year case, detailing each phase from vehicle frame discovery to sentencing, focusing on transitions between traditional techniques and modern forensics. His presentation served as the opener for the cold case methodology discussion, laying the foundation for retrospective investigation based on interdisciplinary data chain analysis. At the conference, FDLE released the Florida Cold Case Investigation Standards 2013, comprising 5 core principles drawn from the Holloway case. 1. Every initial hypothesis must be independently verified with physical data. 2. Old evidence can become decisive if new generation analysis technology is applied. 3. Retrospective investigation must combine 3 information layers: physical, financial, and witness. 4. Uninterrupted chain of custody is mandatory for evidence admissibility in court. 5. Every cold case file must be reviewed periodically every 5 years, regardless of status. The standards were issued as a 96-page handbook with specific examples from the Holloway case describing crime scene reconstruction, motive analysis, and evidence management processes. The conference also discussed ethical aspects of retrospective investigation, especially with elderly or memory-impaired suspects. A representative from the State Justice Institute emphasized, retrospective justice is not about revenge, but affirming that truth still holds value. In the summary, Reddick was invited to speak briefly. He said, "Our job is not just to hunt the perpetrator, but to hunt the reasons truth was forgotten." His words were recorded in the conference minutes and later quoted in FDLE's investigator training program. The conference ended with a signing ceremony between FDLE, FBI, and the Justice Technology Institute to establish the Cold Case Research Network, a federal network for researching reinvestigation methods, sharing digital databases, and scene simulation standards. The conference summary report noted, "The Holloway case became the first national professional standard formed from a cold file, marking the industry's shift from intuition to scientific evidence." In December of the same year, FDLE issued a directive applying the new standards statewide, requiring all local police units with cold case files to re-audit all evidence under the new process by June 2014. In the LED-lit meeting room, a black and white photo of Rachel Holloway was projected on the screen as a symbol for the entire reform program. A reminder that every old case is not just a file, but a professional lesson for the next generation of investigators. On February 10, 2014, nearly 2 years after the court sentenced Todd Holloway and 8 months after the professional summary conference, FDLE officially completed the entire case file and issued the final archive code, FL69, C-2011 resolved, marking the Rachel Holloway case as fully closed in Florida's state justice system. The final file set included 8 main volumes, over 2,400 pages, encompassing all 1969 original documents, 2011, 2012 supplemental examination reports, indictment, court verdict, and all technical appendices for scene simulation, DNA, finances, as well as Detective Michael Reddick's professional summary report. FDLE designated this as the state's first cold case fully recovered, prosecuted, and closed with complete scientific conclusions, entered into the Evidence Continuity Protocol Sample Materials Catalog. In the Jacksonville office, Reddick personally supervised the file closure process. He and two technicians checked every document volume, cross-referencing signatures, identifiers, and seal labels before transferring to digital storage. Each file section was rescanned with a 1200 dpi specialized machine, tagged with QR codes and ESHA 512 hash codes to ensure data integrity. In parallel, the physical copy was placed in a silver-gray composite box, sealed with a red FDLE logo sticker, labeled Resolved, Archive Secure. On February 12, the official handover memo was signed between FDLEL and the Florida State Justice Archive Center in Tallahassee, confirming transfer of all electronic and hard copies. In the memo, the storage source section clearly stated, Rachel Holloway case file recovered 2011, tried 2012, completed 2014. Cold case class 1, fully resolved, permanent archive. During handover, Reddick signed last next to investigator of record. He stood silently for a long time before the file container, lead light reflecting off the aluminum seal, then quietly said to the archive staff, "This file was lost in darkness for 43 years. Now it will stay in its rightful place." The center staff entered code FL69, C2011 resolved, into the system, the data line displaying on screen with green status. Archived secure house, excess level. Educational reference only. A digital copy was transferred to the secondary Orlando archive per cold evidence integrity regulations. The handover report confirmed all data files, from witness interview audio, 3D images to 1969 terrain maps, were encrypted and successfully stored. At day's end, Reddick completed retirement procedures after 28 years of service, with the Holloway case as his final one. In his work log, he wrote briefly, "I hand over not just the file, but the memory of a generation that believes time cannot erase truth." The archive door closed. The LED panel light shifted to green, confirming stable storage status. The final line in FDLE's summary memo read, FL69 C2011 resolved. Case closed permanently. All evidences preserved under forensic continuity protocol. After more than 43 years, the Rachel Holloway case was officially closed, not just with a sentence, but with the permanent preservation of truth in every sealed page within Florida's state justice system. In November 2014, 8 months after file, FL69 C2011 resolved, was handed over to the Florida State Justice Archive Center. Todd Allen Holloway died at Federal Correctional Complex Coleman in Sumter County, aged 81. The Federal Bureau of Prisons report listed cause of death as heart failure due to old age, with no abnormal signs detected. The cremation was simple. Ashes unclaimed by family, handed to local authorities for processing per regulations for unclaimed inmates. News of his death was republished in media under cold case resolved convicts. Just a few short lines. Todd A. Holloway, convicted of murdering his wife in 2012, died in prison, closing a case that haunted Florida for over 4 decades. At the same time, FDLE released the final report on the Holloway case, a 64-page document synthesizing the entire investigation, trial, and post-review process, affirming the case was thoroughly resolved. In the introduction, the report stated, from 1969 to 2014, the Rachel Holloway disappearance spanned 2 investigative generations, from human error to modern forensic technology. The final result proves the principle, justice does not depend on time. The report also recognized the contributions of Detective Michael Reddick and the FDLE team, who recovered the file, reconstructed the scene, and perfected a model cold case investigation process for the state. The final bolded footnote read, "Case closed, no further action required." In December 2014, FDLE sent a copy of the report to the U.S. National Archives, where the Holloway file was officially classified Historical Case Study, stored under Cold Case Resolution, Florida Division of Law Enforcement. A copy was sent to the Florida Justice Academy for use in the Forensic Continuity and historical investigation training course. At the Tallahassee Archive Center, the original file box, labeled FL69, C 2011 Resolved, was placed in cabinet row 14, third shelf, between two other 1970s cases. The electronic label displayed closed, secure historical reference only. At the end of fiscal year 2014, FDLE issued an internal bulletin with the final image of the Holloway file, the silver-gray cover with red seal and engraved words, "Resolved by Science and Persistence" below. In the bulletin's conclusion, the regional director wrote, "From a forgotten file, the Holloway case became Florida's criminal investigation standard. It proves truth can be buried, but never erased." On December 31, 2014, the cold case storage system automatically updated the final status, FL69, C 2011 Resolved. The file code shifted to static green, with no edit options. At the screen's bottom, a small line appeared, "Case duration, 45 years, 6 months, 18 days. And so, in the 45th year since that rainy night over Matanzas Bay, the Rachel Holloway case was officially closed. No more investigation, no more hypotheses, just the pages lying quietly in the cold white light of the archive, where justice had finally found its rightful place. The story of the Rachel Holloway case, starting on a rainy summer night in 1969 and closing only over 40 years later, deeply reflects how modern America views justice, transparency, and the power of science in society. The image of the red Cadillac buried under mud at Crescent Beach for decades symbolizes truths covered by time and human error. The case file being lost due to a single wrong character in the storage code, or the 1969 police hastily concluding, "accident without verification," shows the importance of accuracy, integrity, and persistence in any system, from criminal investigation to public administration. When FDLE recovered the file and applied DNA technology, 3D simulation data, and electronic storage processes, it was not just a scientific victory, but a reminder that justice must be nurtured by progress and transparency. In today's American life, that lesson remains valuable. Whether in justice, media, or daily life, any small data deviation or casual conclusion can bury the truth. Citizens, organizations, and authorities need to learn from FDLE that reform doesn't start at grand forums, but from fixing a process, re-asking a question, carefully preserving evidence. And most importantly, the Holloway case reminds us that truth never ages. It may sleep, but it never vanishes. As long as there are people, like Detective Reddick, who dare believe that whether 40 years or a lifetime pass, justice is still worth reclaiming. Thank you for following the story of the Rachel Holloway case, a journey of over 40 years to uncover truth buried under layers of time. Please subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring other cold cases, where justice still awaits awakening in the next video.